Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 76, Lelich vs Talbumasuk, Warm Up Over. Third Person POV. All of Talbumasuk's forces went shooting off in all directions. At the same time, Lelich began shouting off orders, trying to follow up to maximize advantage for his allies as much as Talbumasuk might do for his own. Along the west side of the town, high in the air, Hisina and Ciela came face to face with one another. Ciela drew out her halberd and swung at Hisina. Her axe clashed against Hisina's blade. Nice form, Hisina grunted as she pushed back against Ciela's weapon. It has to be. I will remove all obstacles in my path. That is my order. Those are rather vague orders, Hisina smirked, mocking the espada. You are an obstacle. Ciela drew back her halberd and swung at Hisina with the pommel of her weapon. Hisina sidestepped and grabbed the end of the weapon. Oh, you want to remove me? Well, we can't have that now, can we? Hisina asked. Saying, she swung her sword out at her side, hand still firmly on Ciela's Zanpakuto, Kaze no Iriko. Hand still on Ciela's Zanpakuto, she whipped her whip high above her head. Tsuji no Yuta, aka Minyo. The visualization of Hisina and Ciela's battle was lost in a whirlwind of fire. North of Hisina's location, southeast of the northwestern pillar, Stefan and Sparga met up with each other, and Sparga's Fraxion, Diego and Victor, met up with Stefan's third and fourth seats, Yossi and Yolanda. So, what's your name? Sparga asked Stefan. Captain of Squad 2, Luska Stefan, Stefan responded, and yours? I'm the Segunda Espada, Sparga de Danilo. He aimed his shotgun at Stefan. Let's get this party started. He fired, but Stefan dodged and reappeared behind Sparga and swung. Sparga blocked with the bayonet along the bottom of the barrel of his Zanpakuto shotgun. You have some impressive moves there. You haven't seen anything yet. Stefan drew away from Sparga and called forth his Zanpakuto. Bare your fangs, Yajokokuo. So, which one do you want? Diego asked Victor. It would be pointless to face them one-on-one, Diego, they're assassins. A one-on-one match is suicide. It's best we go for tag team. Victor told him. And just how do you know we're assassins? Yolanda asked. There's an aura about you and the way you hold your stance that shows the mark of someone looking to kill their enemy quickly and efficiently. I would know because it is the same attitude I exude in battle, Victor replied. Relax, Yolanda, you and I probably will work better as a team anyway. Fly, Tetsuryu. Yossi summoned his Zanpakuto. He then said softly to Yolanda. After all, if you plan on using that, you'll need me. Good point. Yolanda said and whipped out her Zanpakuto and scabbard. Shed no tears, Aki Satsugai. Down on the ground, southeast of the assassin pair, Rukia, Naneo, and Kayan were grouped together. They were lying in wait, prepared to ambush any approaching Arrancar, when a greeting Kayan had hoped he would never ever hear again penetrated his eardrums. Kayan-kun. Kayan's head whipped around. Standing on a house, with her Fraxion alongside her, was Mia. However, she was different that he remembered her. Still, he could not mistake that annoyingly seductive pitch and the way she called out to him, nor could he forget the length of her hair or the lustful look in her eye. Mia. What the hell are you doing alive? I killed you. Can't you let Miyako rest in peace? Kayan shouted, throwing his arm at his side. Mia smiled flirtatiously and pressed her fingertips together in front of her lips. Oh, but why, it's so much fun to be alive. And don't you worry, Miyako's soul is no longer a part of me, but, Mia drew out her sword, that doesn't mean I can't use her powers. They are as much a part of my being as my other abilities. Glide across the valley, Hagani Range. Mia summoned Miyako's Shikai and then ejected out a wing that looked like it was from Sirachi's resurrection. She then fired off the feathers at the ground. They exploded on contact with the ground. Rukia, Kayan, and Naneo scattered. Rukia and Loli formed up on one another and Naneo faced off against Mainoli. Mia retracted her featherless wing and blocked Kayan as he drew out his sword and summoned Nijibano without calling it out. This time when I beat you, I will make sure that there isn't a fragment left of your body so that you can't come back again, Kyan promised. Mia just smiled. South of Hisona's position, Shahei was meeting up with Sparga's only other fraction, Gloria. The 9th Division vice-captain was caught off guard at first by Gloria's wondrous rack, but did his best to ignore the fact and prepare to fight the female fraction. South of their location, more towards the center of the battlefield, on the ground, Mayuri was approached by Kira. "Huh, I was wondering who I could possibly ask to let me take their enemy in alive, but I never thought one of you would come straight to me of your own accord," Mayuri said to the Espada. "This is a war. Did you really think Talbumasuk-sama would not think to occupy all of the captains one way or the other?" Kira asked Mayuri. "I suppose that much is true, but I am a scientist more than a fighter. Still, if you insist, I suppose we had best fight, though I don't see a weapon on you. I am most perplexed." "Weapon?" Kira asked and pulled the pen out of his shirt pocket and aimed it at Mayuri. He charged a Siro, alarming the scientist captain. "Haven't you ever heard that the pen is mightier than the sword?" He fired off the Siro. Down by where he had defeated Karthus, Kenpeka was approached by Neliel and attacked with a roundhouse kick to the head. Neliel landed a direct hit, but she did little more than cause Kenpeka to be slightly disoriented. She didn't accomplish the neck snapping head turn she was going for. She drew away from Kenpeki as he took a swing at her and skid along the ground backwards on one knee before standing up. "You're pretty fast, and judging by your figure," Kenpeki eyed up Neliel, "and your riot suit, I'd say you're a pretty effective fighter, miss. What's your name?" "Neliel Tuo del Schwank, Quinta Espada. Judging from your appearance, I believe you are the one known as Zaraki Kenpeki, captain of Squad 11. Kenpeki put a hand on his cheek. "Oh, so you've heard of me? I've read up on you. According to the data Tremere-sama provided us all with, the title of Kenpeki is given to the strongest warrior in the Soul Society. If you are truly a warrior, then show me your ability and your resolve." Neliel drew out her sword and stood with one hand on her sword and the other on her scabbard. "Fight." Down on the ground, south of this gargantuan battle about to go down, Shisato found herself soon locked in combat with Neliel's tiki-masked fraction, Dondakaka, while Yumichika came in contact with the laser blade ant-looking fraction Peshigwadik. Both fighters could tell that they were in for a tough fight. Northeast of this massive explosion of warriors and riot suit, Ichigo's Nakama was face to face with Kira's fraction. Chad was up against a man with purple skin and teal hair in a white cloak. His name was Wes Modasai. He had his hollow located where his Adam's apple should be. His mask fragments were made up by two spider web-shaped patterns on his cheeks. Chad immediately brought out both Brazo de Richa de Gigante and Brazo Esquierda de Diablo, not wanting to take any chances against his opponent. Tatsuki was up against a nimble-looking, slim, and busty, purple-haired girl by the name of Lilia Pesca. She was wearing a short sleeveless shirt and had demon horns were her mask fragments. Tatsuki, in anticipation for an intense battle, immediately activated her Kataki no Ryu. She was afraid that Kaibun might take control of her again, but she had faith that if she began to blitz that Kaibun at least could make the distinction between friend and foe. As long as she held on to that faith, Tatsuki was fine fighting at full strength. Lastly, Uriah was up against a girl with a striking resemblance to Lilia. She could almost be her twin except for the fact that Sesha Boros, the girl's name, had dark blue hair. Uriah brought out Jinrei Kojaku and, using a trick his grandfather taught him, kept a seal skeinator gripped in his hand, holding the bow in place with two of his fingers. Since Uriah drew back the bowstring of his bow with his left hand, but was right-handed in mostly everything else, if he needed to fight in close quarters he could switch on a dime. That was one thing Uriah loved about his grandfather. The man might be old and turning ancient, but he still could teach Uriah a few things about Quincy combat. East of these two trios, Hitsugaya was paid a visit by the dumb muscle of the Espada, Yami Largo. In the time span of 1 month Yami had reached the apex of his sealed strength. At a moment's notice he could go straight to his release form. Hitsugaya was alarmed by the sheer size of his opponent, looking at Yami wide-eyed. "Hey, I know you," Yami said to Hitsugaya, grinning. "You're the guy that doesn't like nachos." I beg your pardon." Hitsugaya was completely confused only to get punched by Yami. "Who wants Kool-Aid?" Yami shouted at the top of his lungs. Ulquiorra would quite possibly think the brain damage had gotten worse over the course of time. Huh. Oh yeah. Yami drew back his arm and let fly a gigantic bala that then blew up a house. The look on Hichugaya's face as he saw the building blow up from just a bala was the kind of look one gets when they realize they just racked up an $80 restaurant bill, but realize they forgot their wallet. Chocolate rain. Yami's fist came swinging down from above. Hichugaya barely got out of the way. He's big and powerful, but he's slow. Hichugaya thought to himself and readied his Zanpakuto. I can do this. Bankai. Daiguren Hyarin Meru. As Starkey went sailing through the air looking for an opponent, Lilynet at his side, he was suddenly blindsided with a foot to the face. Starkey! Lilynet shouted as she watched her partner tumble across the air. Starkey steadied himself and wondered just what had hit him. Sorry about that, a friendly, slightly sarcastic voice said, but you looked so bored, it seemed like you needed to be woken up to let you know that this is a war zone. Wonderful, Starkey said, getting from his knees to his feet. To be honest though, I really don't want to fight all that much. Can't we just pretend to fight? Well, we can't pretend, Yoryuki said, but tell you what, if you don't want to get serious, I won't use my Zanpakuto. Sounds like a fair deal, Starkey said. Starkey! Lilynet scolded. Come on, don't be like, let's use our release form and crush this bitch together. Sounds like your friend wants to fight, Yoryuki said. She's just impatient. Really though, I'd rather not do this, Starkey said. So then do you give up, cause if you're not going to fight, I feel bad about fighting someone who won't defend themselves, Yoryuki told him. I didn't say I wasn't going to defend myself, Starkey said lazily as he pulled out his sword. He sighed. Whatever, let's get this over with. Yoryuki disappeared and hammered Starkey over the head with her fists, slamming him into the ground. Ah! Starkey! Lilynet dove after him. Yoryuki looked disappointingly at the ground. This is the guy that gave Kisuke and Lelich trouble? How? I suppose I'll figure it out. Yoryuki waited for Starkey to get back up to challenge her again. Meanwhile, all the way to the north of the battlefield, Byakuya stood idly as a pale Arrancar with black hair and half a helmet for mask fragments appeared in front of him. It was Ulquiorra, Espada number 4. You are the one called Kukaki Byakuya, are you not? And? What of it? Byakuya asked back. I am Ulquiorra Schiffer, Cuarto Espada. Ultramir-sama believes that your defeat, the great leader of the Kukaki family, will cause a great damage to morale. Ulquiorra stated. I volunteered to be the one to create that very situation. I see. Byakuya held up his sword. Unfortunately, I don't believe you realize how difficult creating that situation will be. His blade glowed. Scatter, Senbonzakura. East of Mayuri and Kira's conflict, Ichigo was looking around for Grimjo. He found him, but the blue-haired Espada was already engaged in a headlong conflict with Tison. Oi! Ichigo shouted. Both fighters turned to look at him. Well, Kurosaki, you're late. Grimjo smirked at him. Ichigo unsheathed his Zanpakuto. Sorry, with all these fights going on, searching for you is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Kurosaki-san, I believe I already have this fight covered. Tison said to him. This guy and I have a history with each other. Ichigo told him. That does not matter, besides, Lelich Teiko says that he does not want you up against Grimjo this time, so he asked me to intercept him. Tison told him. Well, that was rude of him. Kurosaki's my rival. Grimjo grunted, though he didn't seem to care. Well then, what the hell am I supposed to do? Ichigo asked. Meditate. Tison told him. What? Ichigo barked. Use your Bankai, stand still in an area where you can feel most of the shockwaves of battle and meditate. Lelich Teiko wants you calm and collected and will give you your orders when you receive them. Tison told Ichigo. But Ichigo began to protest. A wise man once said to me, when you are young, you go looking for every fight you can, but when you get older and more experienced you find that the best fights will find you, Tison said as he turned back around to engage Grimjo. Who said that garbage? Ichigo scratched his head. It is not garbage, Tison said, getting testy, and to answer your question it was Zaraki's predecessor who said it. Ichigo, do what he says, Ichigo heard Lelich's voice in his head. But don't worry, you'll have your opportunity, I promise you, Lelich told Ichigo. Ichigo let out a deep breath. All right, I trust you. Ichigo took off northeast to do as Tison instructed him. At that location, Apache, Sun, and Mila Rose were all ganged together fighting a 3-on-3 battle against Kyokaku, Rangiku and Momo. The three Soul Reapers were back to back, swords drawn. Mila Rose was facing Rangiku, Sun was facing Momo and Apache was facing Kyokaku. In clockwise motion the formation of the Soul Reapers was Momo, Rangiku, and then Kyokaku. They seem to be on about our level. Rangiku stated. Seems like it. Kyokaku said. We'll just have to use our best tactics, like Lamperouge Teiko has taught us. With teamwork, some pragmatic tactics and lots of explosions, this should be easy. Momo grinned. Hinamari-kun, are you feeling okay? Rangiku asked her. Momo's smile was rather uncharacteristic on her face, but would not look out of place on Lelich, or Jin. I feel just fine, this is the moment I've been waiting for. For 15 years, Aizen made me soft, but I've hardened again and now during this fight, I aim to get back into how alive being a phantom made me feel. I'm going to crush these three with your help and I am going to enjoy every minute of it. Momo readied her Zanpakuto. Snap, Tabayum. She held up her weapon like a bat. Let's do this. She's got the right idea, Kyokaku said, and whipped her Zanpakuto under her arm, explode with intensity, Kyode Bakuden. Well, I don't want to feel left out so, growl, Hanko. Prepare yourselves Arrancar, Momo declared, for our triple threat teamwork. Ishine watched from nearby as he saw the 6 women go off into battle, but his prided look turned to a scowl when he felt powerful Ryotsu approach. He turned to see Hannibal in front of him. It seems my girls have already taken the field, so I suppose I should as well. The dark-skinned blonde approached Ishine. Ishine stared at her oddly. What, are you so intimidated by my power that you can't prep yourself to fight me? No, it's just. Ishine said. Just what? Hannibal asked. Ishine pointed at her chest. That's distracting. Hannibal shut her eyes and simmered. I beg your pardon, she said through gritted teeth. That's quite the fashion statement, Miss Arrancar, Ishine said with his hand under his chin, it's very pleasing. You're very easy on the eyes, let me tell you. Hannibal blew right past Ishine, taking the tip of his hair off his head. She turned and glared at him. I got enough sexual harassment and commentary from Lord Baragan and still get it from Mia. You are my enemy and, if that's supposed to be a Haori tucked into your shoulder, I would expect you to act with the professionalism of a captain. So you're a serious one then, are you? Hard to tell with a crazy gal like that Mia companion of yours running around who Kayan told me about. She sounded like a piece of work. Ishine said. She is a piece of work. Hannibal grumbled. I was not exactly pleased when a Tremere-sama decided to revive her, but at the same time she is one of my own kind, I wasn't exactly displeased either, why am I telling you this anyway? You are my enemy. Hannibal readied her blade to attack Ishine. I should be making a concentrated effort to kill you. Well, darn, and here I was enjoying our conversation. Ishine rubbed the back of his neck. Your delay tactics won't work on me. En garde. Hannibal leapt at Ishine with her sword. Their battle had begun. Yamamoto, Shunsui, Yukatake, and Urahara were all formed up in front of Talbumasuk. Lelich had taken on after Jin. Neither had drawn a weapon on the other, since Lelich knew Jin's true intentions, but they would flare their Ryuryoku at regular intervals to give off the impression of fighting. Both were going to spectate for most of the fight while Lelich gave his orders. So it's just the 4 of you. Talbumasuk tilted his head as he looked at the head captain, Urahara, and Yamamoto's 2 star pupils. Pity, I expected to be swarmed by more than this. We are plenty for a whelp like you. Yamamoto barked. I'd watch my arrogance level if I were you, Yamamoto Genri Usai, Talbumasuk told him, it could prove fatal. Like you could ever kill me? Yamamoto flared his nostrils. I can very well try, Talbumasuk said. Now then, prepare yourselves to face off against my true power. Talbumasuk drew out his sword. Bankai. His Ryotsu surged in a whirlpool of white energy and he appeared as he had when he fought Baragan, no weapon, and a colored aura at his feet. Currently it was yellow. Korokami no Jiken to Kyukin. Talbumasuk pressed his palms close together, one towards the ground and one towards the air. I will destroy any that stand in my way. He slid his hands away from each other and then swung his hands out at his sides, creating a replica of his Shikai sword in each hand. The yellow aura circulating around his feet coated his body while his right sword became immersed in white energy and the left sword in green. Talbumasuk spun his left sword as he held his right one up over his head, before hold his left sword at the middle of his torso. He scowled at the 4 captain-level enemies before him. And you are all in my way. Prepare to die. With her 2 guns, Yolanda opened fire with her assault rifle onto Diego, who basically was playing bullet dodge and, irritatingly, dodging her shots or deflecting them off his Iero, or his Zanpakuto, like he was having fun. Why can't I ever meet any nice girls? Diego complained as he continued dodging shots. Yolanda charged a blast of energy from her shotgun, but the blast was cleaved in half by Diego's claymore. Irritating little worm. Yolanda accented each attack with a shotgun blast, but Diego rushed in, taking the hits unfazed as he rushed forward and cut Yolanda in the shoulder. But suddenly Diego noticed that all that was left was her long coat. Yolanda was right behind Diego and pushed her shotgun into his neck and fired. Diego went careening into the ground. Yolanda sighed. She figured that had to do it, but suddenly she had to fiercely dodge an incoming claymore strike. The blade ripped through the back of her shitagi, revealing the clasp of her mint green bra. Yolanda looked to see Diego, seeming as if Yolanda's shotgun shot hadn't done so much as slow him down, but the bullet of Reishi was visibly lodged in the side of his neck and there was a clearly visible wound. How are you not dead? I shot you at point blank in the neck. Yolanda exclaimed. Diego pulled the bullet out of his neck. What you mean this? Yeah, this stung like hell. He flicked it and it burst into bits of Reishi. Don't do that again. Yolanda growled fiercely in a way that Kyokaka would be proud of. Why isn't this guy taking things seriously? Is that really all you got? Diego asked. Hardly. Yolanda reopened fire on Diego. At the same time she gave a subliminal signal with her shotgun to Yasuai, but at the moment the third seat was having trouble of his own. Just to keep up with Victor's speed he had to use the yellow aura version of his Zanpakuto. He and Victor traded swing for swing with their swords as metal banged against metal, creating flying sparks. However, in an instant Victor disappeared with a burst of Sonido, coming down from behind Yasuai from above. The third seat used Shunpo to disappear in a flash and dodge out of the way of the strike before rushing back in and swinging wide with his blade, but he missed Victor by a wide margin as the Aaron car took a huge leap back and then used Sonido to get behind Yasuai and drove his pommel into the assassin's upper spine before cutting him wide across the back. Yasuai retreated from his enemy and saw Yolanda's signal. He made a beeline towards her. Victor saw this and beckoned Diego to him. What's up, amigo? He asked his companion. By the looks of things they might be trying a plan of sorts. Be on your guard, Victor replied. No sweat. These guys are all wind and no dagger, you know what I'm saying. Diego laughed off. Don't get so cocky, Diego, an enemy with a plan is extremely dangerous, Victor stated. Honestly, you have Spargasama's attitude, but not his style. Hey, if you act like nothing's wrong your enemy gets angry and they screw up, Diego replied. While the two Aaron Carr discussed the finer details of planning, Yasuai and Yolanda discussed their plan. Can you do it? Yolanda asked Yasuai. Hold them while you shoot them. It's risky, but I can certainly try. Be careful, Yolanda, Yasuai told her. You're the one who has to be more careful than me. Try not to die, Yolanda told him. If I go out, least it'll be as a professional. Yasuai took off. I swear, men and their honor, Yolanda sighed and prepared to combine her weapons. Yasuai returned to face Diego and Victor at the same time. By yourself? Has your teammate given up? Victor asked. Why don't you fight and find out? Yasuai said and switched to his defensive formation by spinning his sword with a blue aura following after it. Diego ripped towards Yasuai like lightning, but Yasuai blocked him on target. A bullet of Reishi ripped through Diego's ankle, nearly tearing off his foot. Diego casually ripped off his appendage and whacked Yasuai in the head with it, but he blocked. Diego retreated and regenerated, but Victor came up from behind Yasuai, and without his speed formation he didn't have the time to block Victor's oncoming assault and got cut in the side of the abdomen by his katana. Victor came at Yasuai from the front with a furious assault of attacks only for a bullet to rip right through his midsection and tear through the other side. Where the hell are those coming from? Diego wondered and activated his Pesquius to try and locate Yolanda. There's our maiden, he grinned when he found her. Looks like I gotta use it. Diego dove towards Victor to keep his pal from falling to the ground and helped him to the top of a water tower. You okay, amigo? He asked him. I should be okay. I'm not as fast a healer as you, so I might need to take a breather. Not to mention she shot right through my intestine, I think. Victor vomited some blood. Can you handle both of them for a bit? Yeah, no problem. Diego got into the air. With Rez this'll be cake, no wait, like a slice of pizza. Rez was Diego's slang for resurrection. He gripped stood with his feet together and fixed his Zanpakuto in place, tip pointing down. Thrust, again. Stinger, Diego's claymore turned and struck him in the chest as if crucifying him, but rather than killing him the weapon melded into his skin, dissolving his long coat and metallizing the strap across his waist. An X pattern of hollow armor formed across the front of Diego's body. His mask fragments turned into chin guards. Two wing-like protrusions of hollow armor ejected from Diego's back, but they had no feathers or the kind of tissue you would find on an insect. The wings connected to a giant skull face, with sharp teeth, pressed into Diego's back. The face had glowing red eyes and a thrust of dark red spirit energy ejecting from behind the teeth and in between Diego's back and the skull, granting him flight rather than air walking. The teeth grew hard and dark red, like the energy in eyes. Diego grinned. First I whip it out. Diego pulled 6 of them out with his hands. They regenerated. He was holding 3 teeth in each hand and they all grew to the size of the largest ones. Then I thrust it. He launched all 6 teeth at Yasuai at blinding speeds, cutting the guy down. Diego pulled another tooth and made it the size of a blade. He slashed Yasuai with his speed, great, he disappeared, reappeared, and slashed him again, force. He smashed Yasuai over the head with the glowing weapon, sending him flying into the ground. He then tossed the object in his hands towards the incoming bullet he sensed. Every angle, he pulled out 2 more teeth and got right in Yolanda's space. It penetrates. He slashed her gun into 3 segments, until he slashed upwards, ripping through Yolanda's shitagi, and up the front of her breasts. With great strength, he turned over. I ram it in. He smashed Yolanda over the head, sending her to the ground. He landed on the ground, well 6 inches off it anyhow, in a parking lot, with clear sight of Yolanda and Yasuai, who found that they didn't like the way pavement tasted. In the end, Diego waved out his arms and summoned all 12 teeth around him at once. We are all satisfied. And you are set free. He sent all of the teeth at the 2 assassins at once. They were just getting to their feet when they saw the projectiles coming. In their condition they'd be ripped full of holes and most likely killed. However, fate was about to be kind to them today. Rain down. 7 of Diego's projectiles were smashed into the dirt, 2 were kicked away, 1 was slashed apart, the 1 was grabbed and thrown into the other. This all happened faster than any of the combatants could blink, and after all was said and done a figure stood in the parking lot in between Diego and Yasuai. Yolanda was behind the former. You 2 would be so lost without me, the figure announced, smirking behind their face mask. Fukutaiko. Yolanda was ecstatic. Kendra had taken the field. Another babe. I seem to be a hit with the ladies today. Diego shrugged off. Kendra flipped her dagger in her hand and took a stance. You'd best get your eyes checked, pal. I'm not just any lady, I'm a lady of war and I'm the second best there is at what I do. Barring Kyan Senpai, I'm the best Fukutaiko in the whole Go Di. Is that right? Diego asked. Well, all right then, He brought out 2 more teeth for weapons. Let's rock, baby. Right back at you. Let's go. Kendra leapt towards Diego like a woman gone wild. With her superior speed, her Ryotsu followed with a sonic shockwave as she slashed at Diego in 3 different parts of his torso from 3 different angles before emerging from the strike on his left flank. She spun on a dime and with her free hand slapped the ground. Bakudo 22, Sekinden. Kendra kicked up red dust, causing Diego to cough and be unable to see. Without word, she got right behind her opponent and kicked him hard in the back, causing him to buckle forward. She then hacked at his left wing, causing it chip, performed a sweeping low kick and swerved to get in front of Diego, and then performed a magnificent jumping uppercut. Diego staggered back and the red fog began to dissipate. Diego righted himself. He wasn't in the greatest of shape, but he wasn't on his last legs like Yosei and Yolanda. You have some impressive moves there, he massaged his jaw. And now for the kill blow. Kendra rushed forward, but was stopped as a katana strike blocked her path. She rolled away, backwards. I see you're feeling better, Diego said to Victor as his partner stood in front of him. And it was so. Victor's wound had healed and Diego's just finished doing so. So they can regenerate. That certainly doesn't make things easy, but nothing I can't handle, Kendra told herself. I must say, you've caught my attention, miss, but be forewarned, because now, Victor's Ryoryoku spiked, I'm motivated. Behead, Verdugo. Executioner, Victor transformed into his resurrection. His mask fragments now covered everything except his mouth and nose. He was wearing a helmet with feathery wings extending from the area that covered his eyebrows. 8 spiked protrusions jutted out from waist, 3 along each of his shoulders, sticking up, and 6 formed along each of his ankles with 4 along each of Victor's wrists. It doesn't matter how many of you there are. I will win, Kendra stated. You talk big, but I doubt you can handle the 2 of us together, Victor said, adjusting his collar. Don't underestimate me. I've been trained for worse, Kendra spoke, preparing her stance. Somehow I highly doubt that, Victor called her bluff. Diego, let's go. Right behind the duo prepared to face off against the lone vice captain. At this same time Stefan and Sparga were locked in combat. The Segunda Espada fired off his gun at Stefan, but the captain of Squad 2 easily dodged each shot, not even showing any gestures when activating his Shunpo. He held steadfastly to his Zanpakuto and waited for his moment to strike. After enough strikes, he'll have to take a moment to adjust his aim due to the recoil, and that will be when I strike. I've seen it happen to Yolanda. It is inevitable, Stefan thought to himself. His change did come and Stefan took it and struck from Sparga's right flank, only to find that Sparga had blocked his sword strike with the blade on the base of his barrel. I think you'll find that I have no weak ranges, Luscateco, Sparga smirked. He then took a few swings at Stefan with his blade shotgun, which Stefan blocked with ease, before taking a hard punch at Stefan's right pectoral and firing off a bala at the same time. Stefan, the moment he saw Sparga throw his punch, retreated back and deflected the bala with his sword. You are indeed skilled, I'll give you that, Stefan complimented. I'm not one of Talbumasuk's latest and greatest for nothing, you know, Sparga told him. Both noticed the fierce battle occurring between Sparga's subordinates and Kendra. She's got a lot of spunk, your LT, Sparga told Stefan. You mean Kendra? She should be best Fukutaiko I think the 2nd Division has had while I've been there, Stefan responded. So what about you, are you the best? Sparga asked. I'll let you be the judge of that, Stefan stated. Well, come on then, show me what you got, Sparga encouraged. Gladly, Stefan charged forward with his sword, but Sparga blocked each incoming swing. The Espada tried the same bala maneuver as last time, but rather than retreat and deflected, Stefan ducked underneath and slashed at Sparga, tearing open his uniform. 1. Stefan took his blade and spun it into Sparga's shoulders. 2 through 6. Stefan grabbed Sparga by the side of the head and hurled him to the side, disorienting him. Stefan then used Shunpo, got right behind the Espada and slashed at his shoulders. 7. He performed a helm splitter from behind. 8. Stefan then spun upwards into a somersault, scoring 2 more hits with his blade, before popping out of the curled-up formation and slamming the force of his spiritual power down on Sparga, sending him crashing through the apartment complex below their battle. Air combo. Stefan knew that couldn't have finished his opponent, but he waited for Sparga to come to him. Sparga did appear and he looked to be in pretty awful shape, or rather his uniform did. Sparga's wounds had all healed. Not bad, I definitely think this'll be worth my full effort. I don't like what you're implying, Stefan said to him, getting defensive. Sparga undid the buttons to his overcoat and then discarded it, letting it flap in the breeze. He was wearing a sleeveless wife beater underneath and he was shown to have been wearing white jeans for pants. Sparga grabbed his monocle and pulled it away from his eye and latched it onto the side of his face. Ah, that's better. I see, so you're like Zaraki. You give yourself handicaps so you can enjoy your fights. Stefan seemed a little less on edge, but quickly got into position. I know how to deal with your kind. Well then, let's make this interesting, amigo, Sparga said with a grin. He aimed his gun at Stefan and fired. To be continued. Chapter 77, Talbumasuk's Power, Urahara's Resolve. Third-person POV. Nijibana already released Kai and clashed with Mia in a flurry of water and wind. Nijibana wave ripped forward towards Mia, who spun Hagani Wrench to stop Kayan's attack as it clashed with a gale force wind generated by Miyako's Zanpakuto. Kayan, of course, knew this technique, and got behind Mia and attacked. Koto Yukinohana. He spun Nijibana towards Mia's back, but her tentacles shot out of her back, grazing him above his unarmed shoulder, and then unleashed one of her wings and fired several mechanized feathers at Kayan. He dodged and escaped, planting his feet firmly on a nearby lamp post, grabbing onto it to remain against it. Like the upgrade? Sirachi-chan's DNA now flows through my veins, so a part of her abilities are now mine to incorporate, even in sealed form, Mia smirked at Kayan. No, I don't like it, he scowled. Don't you get it, Mia? I despise you. Your mere presence irritates me. I don't care if Miyako's soul is no longer a part of your own, but you already left an irrevocable impression on my soul. Miyako might have moved on, but the beast that consumed her dwells within you. You kept her soul in bondage, from passing on, for more than 4 decades. On Miyako's honor, I will see to your permanent destruction. Bankai. The 8 replicas of Nijibana all formed around Kayan. Nijibana Sora ni Raisenjo. Ah, this again. Mia eyed Kayan's Bankai with desire and licked her lips. I must say I am very interested in fighting your Bankai with this new body of mine. Last time you managed to overpower me, but I am as strong now as I was right before you killed me. So what will happen if I release? Will that even the score? Seduce, Sukubo. Mia transformed again. Her bare breasts in full view, horns atop her head, and her rather revealing outfit all formed up onto her body. Her bat-like wings shot out of her back, but they had Sirachi's feathers and 4 tentacles, 2 above and 2 below her wings on either side of her body, emerged from Mia's back. These were not the thick pink tentacles Metastasia had that Mia was using earlier. These tentacles were sleek and white. Mia gave a flirtatious laugh as she eyed Kayan hungrily. I want you, body and soul, she spoke lustfully. At another location, Rukia was faced off against Loli, who was already using her knife Zanpakuto to combat Rukia's sealed blade. Rukia was trying to postpone having to use Sode no Shirayuki if she could to try and see if she could have an advantage without it. Excessive force was unnecessary, and as long as her allies were safe there was no cause for alarm. However, when she sensed that Naneo was having a rough time with her opponent, she decided to release. Dance, Sode no Shirayuki. Rukia released her sword and aimed it at Loli as the speedy, nimble Arrancar came in after her. Tsuji no Mai, Hakuren. Loli saw the ice coming in and prepared a countermeasure. Rukia didn't hear the invocation heard by Loli as she called for her resurrection. However, by the time Loli released, she was a frozen statue. However, as Rukia neared the statue to shatter it, she noticed purple fluid seeping through the cracks in the ice, only to remember that Sode no Shirayuki never left any cracks. Rukia backed away from Loli as the Arrancar emerged in her resurrection, Escalipendra. Surprised, she asked Rukia. Escalipendra, the name of my resurrection, it corrodes all that it touches with its deadly poison. Loli fired forward one of her extra arms at Rukia. The sixth seed dodged and lowly cleaved a lamp post in half, causing it to dissolve. On the opposite side of the destroyed lamp post, Nanao and Mainoli were locked in combat. The 8th Division Vice Captain was focusing her strikes with her Kido and Mainoli was just firing off zeros like it was nobody's business. Hado 33, Sakasui. Nanao fired her Kido and blasted it straight at Mainoli, who countered with a zero. She sonidoed behind Nanao and struck with her small dagger of a Zanpakuto. Nanao raised her left arm and surprisingly, to Mainoli, received no damage as she retreated by using Hado 1, Sho to push Mainoli back. Well, that's a surprise. I didn't know Soul Reapers could block with their bare arms against a weapon and live to tell about it. For a moment I thought you were about to throw away your arm, Four Eyes, Mainoli taunted. Don't be ridiculous. Nanao adjusted her glasses as she held her arm across her body as though it were in a sling. That would necessarily be true under normal circumstances, but what you hit wasn't my arm. Nanao reached into her sleeve. It was this. She drew out a small dagger, my Zanpakuto. So you keep your Zanpakuto in your sleeve? Mainoli asked. That's an odd place to keep it. I don't have another place for it, okay? Nanao blushed, glaring at Mainoli's chest, seemingly jealous of how stacked she and her comrade were. She cleared her throat, realizing her unprofessionalism. She glanced down at her Zanpakuto. It's been a long time since we worked together, please do not let me down. Now screech, Fukuro. Owl. Nanao broke off her Zanpakuto's blade as a pair of large gold bracelets formed on each of her arms. Both the handle and the blade of her Zanpakuto transformed into two separate blades, each no bigger than a dagger and a half, and the blades were curved like the end of a spear. Nanao charged furiously at Mainoli and struck at the Arrancar with swift, accurate strikes, forcing Mainoli onto the defensive. Mainoli used Sonido to break away from Nanao, but Nanao followed her out of the corner of her eye and put the hilts of her daggers together, forming a makeshift bow and, pulling on an invisible bowstring, created a large white, harpoon-shaped arrow. She aimed at Mainoli, who dodged to the side, but Nanao followed her arrow with her eyes and changed its trajectory midway through its flight, and it swerved into Mainoli's stomach, bursting upon contact with her body and pushing her into the nearby billboard advertising a brand of spearmint gum. I can do this. I am not useless. My Zanpakuto is not something to be frowned upon. I have power. Nanao fired another arrow at Mainoli. Rukia and Loli continued their game of cat and mouse. Rukia had already had to freeze her pointer finger with her own blade to stop Loli's poison from corroding her entire body, learning just how corrosive Loli's ability was. As she retreated away from her attacker, she turned as she dodged another strike and prepared a Kido as she crossed Sode no Shirayuki under her arm. Hado 31, Shakkeiho. That won't work. Loli exclaimed and swatted away Rukia's Kido as if it were nothing. My Escalopendra can corrode anything, Kido, skin, tissue, metal, it doesn't matter. It's incredibly fast-acting and dissolves the target in seconds until they're like that lamp post. Loli indicated the now smoldering pile of violet goop. So try all you like, but you're through, Soul Reaper. Loli attacked Rukia again and again, lashing out relentlessly, but Rukia, with her superior reflexes, dodged each strike while she thought up a plan in her head. As the game of dodge or die continued, Mainoli continued to dodge Nanao's arrows with her Sonido, and whenever she came in close, Nanao would separate her bow on a dime, often using her gigantic arm bracelets as shields so that Mainoli could not cut her during the forceful separation of the weapon. Mainoli currently had a scratch just below her eye where Nanao had managed to cut her with one of her blades. For a glasses-wearing bitch, she's pretty good, Mainoli thought and then grinned, but I bet even she can't stop a zero at point blank. Mainoli went zipping around the air in an erratic pattern, inciting Nanao to attack. Nanao took aim, trying to get Mainoli in a proper line of fire. She could only change the trajectory of her arrows so much after firing. She couldn't do a U-turn or any of the erratic motions Mainoli was pulling with them. Mainoli charged a zero as she zipped around and then got behind Nanao with it all set and ready to go. There now, she'll have to, Mainoli gasped when she Nanao turn on a dime without separating her bow and swing at her stomach line. Mainoli retreated back, but her panic sent her zero off into the sky and it blew up. Did you think that I had to separate my bow for close quarters? Nanao asked as the dust settled. It's true that Fukuro's bow form is meant for long-range projectile shooting, but the wise warrior always thinks of all ways to use his or her weapon, even ways that seem improbable, but because they're improbable are crucial to learning because they are unexpected, and with a blade-end bow like mine it's a well-crafted tactic. For example, Nanao turned the bow sideways and held it with one hand and then brought out her scabbard from within her sleeve and pulled the seemingly invisible bowstring around it. Like this I can even create a large crossbow. She fired a lightning-quick arrow that struck Mainoli in the chest. It burst upon contact, and pushed her back. If only I could get these things to pierce. They always explode when they hit their target rather than pierce right through. I've never understood if that's a mechanic or if I still have yet to control Fukuro's ability. Nevertheless, while Mainoli was reeling, Nanao shot her 6 more times with her makeshift crossbow. She was on the offensive and she was going to take Mainoli out before she could go on the counter-attack. Behind Mainoli, Rukia and Loli's battle had circled in a full arc around Nanao and Mainoli's fight, and now Loli's back was to Nanao's bow, with Mainoli in between, though only Nanao knew that. She fired off her arrows at Mainoli, but the Arrancar girl ducked underneath them and both arrows hit Loli square in the back. Loli, angered, turned and saw Nanao, enraged. Damned four-eyed bitch. She coiled her tendril towards Nanao. Nanao fired arrow after arrow at Loli's incoming attack, but the arrows were having no effect on her strike and Nanao was grappled by Loli. Rukia charged forward to help Nanao, but was blocked off by Loli's rear centipede-like appendages. Ise Fukotaiko. Rukia shouted. Tsujin no mai. Hakuren. Rukia fired off her ice, but Loli shredded it to pieces with her poison. Rukia tried to circle around to help Nanao, stop her tortured screaming, but it was like Loli had an eye on the back of her head as she prevented Rukia from getting anywhere near her captured prey as she squeezed Nanao like wet sponge, filling her body with corrosive poison. Rukia wasn't the only one hearing Nanao's screams. Shunsui also could hear his Fukotaiko's agonized screams, but was caught off guard by a sudden rushing attack from the yellow orified Talbumasuk. I'll kill you if you get distracted, you know. You'd do best to remember that. Talbumasuk told Shunsui as he barely managed to defend himself from the oncoming strike. A sense of heat coming towards Talbumasuk alerted him to Yamamoto's fiery blitz and he moved out of the way with his massively increased speed. With his yellow aura coating his body, Talbumasuk was now twice as fast, surpassing the speed of the 2nd Division captain and possibly giving the fabled goddess of Flash a run for her money at the speeds he was able to move at. So far it was keeping him alive so that he could stay undamaged and possibly force the enemy clustered together, but so far no luck. Lelich realized that if the group attacking Talbumasuk clustered together that the Overlord would waste no time activating his time-stop attack and immobilize them all and inflict serious damage before they were able to move again. Lelich figured he was at a safe enough distance where he would not be affected. He had Bakudo 58, Kakushitsujaku cast multiple times to watch the battle against Talbumasuk from many different angles. He could sense the stress Nanao was in. If she was going to die there was nothing he could do for her. There was only one option he could make, call a backup unit. Loli continued to torture Nanao as her poison seeped into the Fukotaiko's veins until her lungs filled with poison and her body began to bubble and dissolve. Ise Fukotaiko. Rukia screamed in alarm. There was nothing that could be done though. Nanao's screaming stopped and her body finally dissolved. Rukia's expression was one of pure horror. Loli's was pure glee. Mainoli was starting to recover. Another Soul Reaper had been killed and now Rukia was about to face an enemy she still was having trouble contending with on her own as well as another. This is bad. Rukia thought to herself, but thankfully, her help had arrived and it did so by slipping straight through Loli's defenses and planting her foot in her solar plexus, sending her careening into the ground. Rukia Aid then turned and backhand slapped Loli in the side of the face, before using Shunpo to get behind her, kicking her in the upper back and sending her into the ground along with Loli. Rukia looked at her new partner, short skirt, dark violet hair with a braid and a vice-captain's armband. There is no cause for alarm, Rukia. Lelich-sama has asked me to aid you, and aid you I shall. Nimue bowed to Rukia. Rukia nodded. She solidified her resolve and arced her position to stand at Nimue's side. Be ready for them, that one with the extra appendages dissolves anything it touches, that's what got Ise Fukotaiko. I understand, Nimue responded, I shall be ready. Mayuri recognized it when Nimue took to the field. He had escaped Kira's initial Zero and was now taking the time to observe the oddball Espada rather than fight him with full force. Mayuri hadn't even released his Shikai, merely drawn his sword. He took the moment to acknowledge the fact that Nimue had taken to the field. Well, wonders never cease, it seems Lelouch Teiko has actually summoned Nimue to the field. How intriguing. I would have thought his attachment to her would have had him leave her out of the battle completely unless absolutely necessary, but it seems I was mistaken, Mayuri remarked. Kira fired a Zero to get his attention, but Mayuri simply held up his sword and seemed to cancel Kira's Zero just by poking it. Now really that was rather rude. It's very rare that my daughter gets to fight, so allow me, as a father, to acknowledge the fact. Whether or not Mayuri meant the latter half of that statement or not was entirely unknown. Lelouch would say he was lying through his teeth with the way he treated Nimue, but the twisted captain had said the statement with a completely straight face. And Zeros are boring, really. I've studied enough about Minos that even an Arrancar's Zero is something I can simply sneeze at. Damn you! Would you take me seriously? Kira shouted. Mayuri put a hand up by his non-existent ear. Are you saying you want me to actually fight you? If you're that eager for me to see you as an opponent and not a research subject, or for me to even be the least bit interested in you at all, you'd best hurry up and show me your resurrection. If your Zanpakuto is not any form of conventional weapon and is, in fact, that pen, I am most interested in seeing why. Kira laughed maniacally, but briefly. So you want to see my resurrection, do you? Well, alright then, feast your eyes on this. Kira began writing in the air. Right, he said as his strokes became a parallel as writing the aforementioned word in scripted English across the air, Quaderno. Notebook. As Kira reached the E in right, he dragged his pen across the air, slicing the air-written word in half before drawing it back in the other direction. Kira began to transform as a black whirlwind, accompanied by a flurry of white feathers formed around his body. 2 white, feathery wings shot out of Kira's back and stretched out behind his back rather than out into the sides. White plumes shot out around his shoulders, waist, neck, ankles and wrists. Kira's shirt had completely dissolved and he was now showing off his bare skin. Kira's hollow hole was in full view where his heart should be and his 9 tattoo was right under it. However, quickly, bandages began to cover his torso and left arm, completely covering them, leaving his right arm uncovered. Hollow bone armor coated his right hand as his right index finger shot out to twice its length with the pen point from his Zanpakuto emerging underneath from his index fingertip. Mayuri grinned as the whirlwind and feathers died down. How intriguing. So what exactly can this bizarre form of yours do? I'm about to show you. Kira said and fired a Zero from his grown index finger. TCH, really? Mayuri said as he stopped the Zero, only for Kira to appear right behind him and rake his pen tip up Mayuri's back, cutting into his skin. Mayuri turned around and leapt back as his blood dripped from Kira's blade fingertip. I'm so sorry, Captain, in all the excitement I completely forgot to ask you your name. And why on earth would you want to know something like that at this point? Mayuri asked. Kira crossed his bandaged arm over his body and bowed. I believe it is only honorable, as such as your kind, to exchange the pleasantry of name exchange before battle, but in the excitement of actually having a chance to fight, I forgot this detail. Kira stood upright. Won't you humble me? He asked as innocently as possible. Oh, very well, since if by telling you my name I'll also learn yours, I am Kuratsuka Mayuri, captain of the 12th Division and the head of the Department of Research and Development. Kuratsuka said with such a straight face one would think the laceration in his back was merely a paper cut. Kuratsuka Mayuri, let me write that down so I don't forget it. Kira grinned as he wrote the name down, using Kuratsuka's own blood on his bandaged left arm. Is that part of your resurrection, writing down names? Though with a name like Quaderno I suppose that's to be a given, but was something supposed to happen by your doing that? Oh, it will. In the meantime, while you wait to be amazed by my ability, why don't I tell you my name? Kira said as he let his armored arm drop down at his side, palm facing up. I am known as the Novena Espada, Kira Luz. As Kira made that declaration, a surge suddenly ran through Kuratsuka's body as he felt as if his entire body had just lost all functionality. His heart still beat and he could still think, but it was if his entire nervous system was not accepting the responses sent out to the rest of his body from his brain. Mayuri fell over like a log. Kira laughed like a maniac. "How do you like that?" he asked Mayuri. "My resurrection's power shuts down the motor skills of anyone whose name I write down on my arm or my torso in their own blood. All I have to do is wait 40 seconds and they're out cold. And coming back is no easy feat, but you're through." Kira leapt into the air and took aim at Kuratsuki. "Zero!" he shouted with a manic smile. He blasted Kuratsuki straight through the torso, or at least that's what he was aiming for, but something, or rather someone, got in his way. Standing over Mayuri's fallen form, preventing the fallen captain from being defeated was a burly, tall, dark-skinned man with a cornrows haircut, rectangular rimmed glasses, a blue kitchen apron, a white t-shirt and grey jeans with both his hands on Kira's Zero. With his massive muscles he then took one hand off the Zero and with the other deflected it into the south edge of the barrier. Taking the field in place of the now conscious, but otherwise paralyzed Kuratsuki, Tessai Tsukubishi had taken the field. Body press. Tessai leapt high into the air and came dive-bombing down from above onto Kira. The ninth Espada dodged to the side and fired a Zero, but with his massive muscles Tessai punched the Zero and deflected it away from him. Tessai landed on the ground and drove an underhand punch into Kira's gut, knocking the wind out of him. He then let drive several furious, fast punches in the same spot before performing a swinging motion upwards with both arms, smashing Kira in the jaw before bringing both arms down and bashing the Novena over the head. Kira bounced off the ground and Tessai grabbed him by the legs. Pile driver. He smashed Kira headfirst into the ground. Such a move, the way Tessai was executing it, should have broken the Espada's neck, but Kira got up and relocated his vertebrae like it was nothing, proving once again that dead spirits could come off of otherwise fatal attacks. Damn you! Kira sonitoed right behind Tessai, but the massive former Kido Corps commander performed a double lariat and bashed Kira twice in the side of the face before performing a powerful uppercut and sending Kira high into the sky. "Okay," the Espada breathed, "as long as I'm this high in the air he can't reach me. There's no way he can from that low down on the ground." That would be true, but Kira was up against Tessai, the master of the improbable. Tessai shot up from the ground like a rocket. Panicking Kira fired a Zero at Tessai, but he had taken such a pounding that the Zero didn't go out at full force. "You've gotta be kidding me, I've taken that much damage?" Kira was annoyed. He grimaced as Tessai stopped his charge and bashed away his Zero. "Looks like I have no choice, I'll have to use that other ability." Kira, creating ink on the end of his pen tip, began to write down a different name on his torso. It spelled out, Tensa Zanjutsu. In a flash black energy exploded from around Kira and Tessai saw that Kira was now holding a perfect replica of Ichigo's Bankai blade in his hand and also seemed to have Ichigo's long coat around him as well. "I was hoping to not have to use this against someone that hasn't even drawn a weapon, but I'm not going to have much choice." Kira's other ability allowed him to write the names of Zanpakuto that he knew and then use those Zanpakuto to his advantage, even Bankai. Of course he could only use these replicas temporarily and they only allowed him to use the abilities of what he had seen performed by these Shikai or Bankai. This ability of his, he had learned, did not extend to resurrection. He picked Ichigo's because right now he had a need for Ichigo's speed and was sure that the black arc disc things he saw Ichigo fire would be useful. Unfortunately Kira didn't know that the attack had a name, and so the strength of the strikes would be severely weakened. He thought about using Segunda Etapa, but Talbumasuk's orders were that if you felt like Segunda Etapa was necessary then you would retreat first to live to use it the next time the invasion was made. Talbumasuk wanted to use this first wave to feel out the powers and limits of his enemies, then make a tactical retreat and come back out again with all of the Espada in their Segunda Etapa forms. Kira knew what happened to those that disobeyed orders. There were enough video recordings that showed why it was a smart idea to listen to Talbumasuk. So now the Espada faced off against Tessai with a borrowed Bankai and a battered body, hoping he could hold out until the retreat. At this same time, Kenpeki and Neliel's battle was heating up intensely as the two clashed against each other. Neliel stood facing the wild, grinning fighter opposing her, her face a mask of stoic resolve. This was it, this was everything her lord and master had planned for. There was no room for failure. Carefully, she assessed her opponent. His Ryotsu was out of control, powerful like few she had seen before. It was not quite as powerful as her own, but she did not underestimate him. As far as she remembered, the 11th Division captain had more than one ace up his sleeve, or so the archives had said. Taking a stance, she decided to let him come at her first. Too much was at stake to risk aggression. Charging in strong could win her the match quickly, but it could get her killed. Using the Resurrection was probably a good idea, but it was something she had to use sparingly. This savage was probably not the only soldier she would have to kill. You sure seem like you could be a lot of fun, Kenpeka said, stepping forward. What do I say, we have a lot of fun? Not responding, Nilil simply held up her sword, challenging him. Kenpeka wasted no time, charging right at her, slamming his sword down on her with great force. She reeled back. The force of the impact was monstrous, her arm hurt from blocking it. Pushing back, she swung at his head, but he ducked, swinging his blade at her wildly, like a savage with a club. Taking the defensive, Nilil blocked his assault over and over. Raw power, lots of it, but not a lot swordsmanship. He knew how to kill, but not how to fence. Good. Again, Kenpeka swung down on her, laughing like a madman. She blocked the first hit, then took a quick sidestep, feinted, and redirected the next hit as it came down, sending his strike glancing down into the ground. There was an eye blink's worth of an opening, and she took it. Slicing upwards, she cut first his left shoulder, then his right. Amazingly, the brute simply chose to counterattack, his blade nearly skewering her skull mask fragment. She barely managed to step back, a shallow wound now running from the left of her nose to her forehead. Her hollow mask had been nicked. Kenpeka spat, and flexed his muscles. Good on, he said appreciatively. Nilil sighed inwardly. He was as mad as she had been led to believe, choosing to attack even when defense made more sense. Your form is terrible, she commented. You're an accomplished swordsman, I am sure, but at this level you will only die. I would offer you a chance to surrender, but I am guessing dash. You guessed right, Kenpeka said, sprinting forward. A huge grin on his face, he stabbed towards her head. Nilil bent backwards, narrowly avoiding the hit. With her sword, she caught his blade. Redirect, then cut it would work. She pushed his blade up, ready to strike at the next opening. Suddenly, the maniac had grabbed her sword arm by the wrist. In a snap second, he brought his sword round, stabbing right at her chest. The blade ran her through right below her breasts, and a look of shock passed over her face. Using his sword one-handed, that leaves an arm free. Oh, she had underestimated him. This was the kind of base ruthlessness any hollow who prospered learned, and Shinigami was giving her that lesson. Stepping back, Kenpeka pulled his sword out of her. He spat at the ground, and ripped off his haori, now torn and ragged too badly to be carried. So you say at this level, I am gonna lose? Kenpeka said, his face serious. Girl, I've been holding back to see if you can keep up with me. Can ya? Nilil cursed to herself. What then, from here? She recalled a few words Talbumasuk-sama had said to her before they left. When you reach the field of battle, you must show no mercy or restraint. The quicker you kill an enemy, the better. I know you dislike killing unless it is absolutely necessary, but I tell you, this is absolutely necessary. Any hesitation could cost you my life, and all my espada are important to me. For your own sake, you must kill anyone in your way as quickly and efficiently as possible. You are merciful, so be merciful, and kill them without pain or gloating. If you find an advantage, exploit it. If he has a weakness, use it fully to your advantage. Fights are never fair, so do not fool yourself into a delusion of kindness. Fight. She had to protect her fraction, her friends. Talbumasuk-sama was going to make a new world order happen, one where the constant chain of eat or be eaten would no longer be necessary. She had to win. Speaking of her fraction, Pesha and Dondokaka had made quick close personal friends, enemies with Yumi Chika and Shisato respectively. Dondokaka swung fiercely time and again at Shisato with his kanabo, but the fierce third seat of Squad 10 bashed back every strike with her fist using her shikai. Yumi Chika, though having a rougher time, was able to stand on par with Pesha's erratic movement and even more unpredictable attack pattern. Unlike Shisato, he wasn't using his Zanpakuto's full ability. If he was, he'd probably be wiping the floor with Pesha. At the main focal point of the whole war, the battle between Talbumasuk, 3 of the 4 senior captains, and Urahara, Talbumasuk, with his superior speed, was doing a good job narrowly escaping traps set up by the enemy to corner him, and with his increased skill that he had gained over the last few months, he had a little more ability to deal with attacks that might have usually caught him off guard. This was his plan though. He planned to do nothing but dodge, attack only with physical attacks, and force Yamamoto and Urahara, the 2 more powerful combatants, to waste most of their Ryuryoku trying to hit him, and then, while still unscathed, go in and begin beating down the enemy with an advantage using one of the aces up his sleeve. He dodged another jet stream of flame from Yamamoto, parried a strike from Shunsui, ducked under an attack from Yukatake, and counterattacked using Hiryuji Kazoku Shintenreiho without an incantation against Urahara's attack, slowing it down and giving him time to get away. He widened the gap between him and his opponents and dematerialized what was currently the only sword in his hand, since he had dispelled the other one to cast his Kido. Lelouch did not know all of Talbumasuk's abilities, and Jin wasn't being of any help, so his thought process was, since Talbumasuk was using Bankai, to keep forcing him to use it until he tired out. Lelouch still had the Vizards on call. They could be here on a moment's notice, as they were just outside the eastern side of the barrier where Lelouch currently was nearby. Right now though, he believed himself to have the advantage. He was very wrong. Talbumasuk stood in place and his aura changed from yellow to orange. Zeko no Sozo. Aura of Creation, performing the motion he had originally used when he activated his Bankai before calling out his swords, Talbumasuk coated his entire body in the orange aura. His Ryutsu, it's skyrocketing. Yukatake noticed. Impossible, how could he be increasing this strongly, what has he been hiding? Lelouch wondered as he sensed the increase from far off. Be careful everyone, I don't like the feel of this, Urahara said, like it even needed to be said. Fast as lightning, Talbumasuk disappeared faster than he had been moving before and socked Shunsui right in the stomach so fiercely that it tore a superficial blast of energy through his chest. It tore right through his clothes and created a devastating bruise upon the man's stomach, knocking the wind right out of him. Tal then appeared, faster than anyone could blink, and axe-kicked Shunsui right in the neck, sending him plummeting right into the ground. He even managed to grab the man's hat before it fell out of reach. He then whipped it like a frisbee at Urahara, who sliced it in half. Tal stood in place watching. Seems like the 4th Division captain is going to have her hands full, Talbumasuk chuckled to himself as he glanced over his shoulder at the other 3 captains. I can finish off Kiraka though after I've taken care of you 3. Talbumasuk said. How did you get so strong? Urahara asked with a serious tone. You couldn't even break Benihime with your Kido earlier, and now you punched out Kiraka like it was nothing. That doesn't seem very consistent. What does this aura do to you? Rule 1 of successful villainy, Talbumasuk responded lowly, never tell the enemy your secrets unless you are certain they have no countermeasures. If Talbumasuk were a cliché villain, he'd make a speech about how the power he was using right now was a form of temporal manipulation that put him at the apex of his power and potential. However, he was thinking it in the back of his mind, all things have potential, my aura puts me at the height of that potential and perpetually keeps me at it, but in exchange I am limited to using just my hands and Kido. I cannot summon my swords or use any other abilities of my Bankai unless I cancel this ability first. And right now it seems like this will do just fine. Talbumasuk rushed Urahara and busted the former captain right in the chest, rupturing his lung. Rather he would have, but the Urahara he had punched burst like a balloon. It seems you 2 have abilities I'm not yet aware of, though that's to be expected from a man of your caliber. Talbumasuk glanced over his shoulder, seeing Urahara behind him, unharmed. Even my sensei was wary of you. As if to make matters worse, a surge of energy was felt by the southeast pillar as a giant, bald creature with more than 10 limbs emerged, the size of a Japanese movie monster. Ah, it seems Yemis released his form. Yukatake. Lelouch's voice rang inside the senior captain's head. What is it, Lelouch? This isn't a good time. I know, but I need you to go and help hit Chugaya. I remember that thing from the reports I snuck a peek at while I was in Hueco Mundo, Sogyo no Kotori is the best equipped to handle it. But what about Talbumasuk? Yukatake asked. You let me worry about him. Lelouch responded. Yukatake looked at Yamamoto. Sensei, I'm going to go and help Ichuga Yateko. You sure that's wise? You'd be leaving these two by their lonesome selves. Talbumasuk taunted. Yukatake didn't respond to the taunt. Go. Yamamoto encouraged. The two of us can handle this upstart whelp. Sir. Yukatake left without another word. Lelouch took a deep breath and closed his eyes momentarily. What's the matter, Lelouch? Jin asked as he heard the breath coming from Lelouch. Never thought we'd need them this soon, but a tactician must do what a tactician must do. That's just like Yatta have a backup plan for every occasion. What ya got? Rather than wasting time to tell Jin, Lelouch just did it. This is Zero, come in Unit V. This is Unit V, an accented voice responded, our turn to come in and help out. Yeah, all of you go straight for Talbumasuk. You got it. In the span of less than half a minute, 8 individuals came rushing in through the barrier on the east side of Karakura town and formed up by Yamamoto and Urahara, helping to surround Talbumasuk. Hirako. Yamamoto was surprised to see him and the other banished Soul Reapers. Well, I see Lelouch found you guys after all. Urahara put a hand on his bucket hat. Yamamoto looked at Urahara. Ah yeah, you see, I've been keeping these guys hidden in solitude for their own benefit. Lelouch found them though with my help on one of his visits to me over the years. He had them on reserve. He figured we could use them if things got ugly. With the new Central 46 still being formed they wouldn't be able to object until after the fact, but if Lelouch had them with us right at the start we figured there might be loyalty issues, but rest assured they're here to help. Let's cut the chatter, we've got an asshole to kill, Shinji said. I do seriously hope you jest. Do you all really think you can beat me? Talbumasuk asked. Please, you might be super strong, but you're not invincible, especially if we all kick your butt where you stand. Hirako said. All of the Vizards immediately went for their masks and equipped them. They fell for it. Talbumasuk dispelled his orange aura and it immediately turned red. As the Vizards charged their Zeros, Talbumasuk's aura flashed for a few seconds. Hirako stop. Lelouch knew what was about to happen. Urahara-san. Suteiko. Lelouch urged them to do something. He knew what red meant if Renji and Soifon's statements were anything to go by, but it was too late. Talbumasuk cast his time-stop attack, affecting everyone and stopping the Zeros and attacks right as they were fired. While everyone around Talbumasuk was still stopped dead, he cast his temporal accelerator as he summoned his right-hand sword on the Vizards' masks causing them all to shatter, even Mashiro's. He then summoned his left-hand sword and sped himself up and milking all 20 seconds he had for all they were worth he worked over the Vizards and Yamamoto and Urahara, delivering a slash wound to each individual. His enemies felt the injuries just as time restored itself to them, but by this time Talbumasuk was already back at his starting location and had put away both his swords, changing his aura from red to black. This won't be as powerful as when I killed Baragan since I just used my time-stop attack and I'm attacking multiple targets, but it won't exactly tickle, even the head captain should be largely affected. Talbumasuk sent out a dark wave of energy trapping all of the Vizards, Yamamoto, and Urahara in black, opaque spheres. Karakai Musho, Talbumasuk declared. Since all of his enemies were trapped he knew he could safely gloat. He laughed before he did so. That was so easy. Are you listening, Lelouch? You thought you had me figured out, but you were dancing right in the palm of my hand without knowing it. You probably thought you could overpower me, use the Vizards to stop me in conjunction with Yamamoto and Urahara, but this is exactly what I was waiting for. I knew you had to have made contact with Hirako and the others, why else would he have come to Hueco Mundo? If not for that I would have used this ability earlier and your trap might have actually worked, but instead I played it cautious. Your plan backfired because you have no knowledge as to the true power of my Bankai. If this were still my sensei you probably would be doing a lot better. As they say, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, but my power makes sensei's Kyoka Suijutsu look almost like a parlor trick. True, sensei could probably still defeat me with it, but illusions are simply illusions, and with your brain you may have found a way around them, but my powers are very real and very potent. Now watch as your allies are crushed under the weight of my spiritual power. Hiri, Mashiro, Lisa and Hachigen took the worst damage. All four were brought within an inch of their life. Shinji, Love and Rose took the hits really hard too, having just had their masks forcibly shattered. They'd be down for the count for a bit. Lelouch was forced to concentrate the entire relief unit onto the Vizard's location. Kensei wasn't banged up as much, but the explosion blast combined with the earlier sword slash is what put him out. Yamamoto had his Haori and Kosid and Shitagi destroyed. His body burnt and his torso slashed, but he was still standing. He was in a battered up condition, but he could still fight. However, the big problem, and something Talbumasuk soon became wary of, was that Urahara was nowhere in sight. Pissed, over here, came a dark forbidding voice as a red energy beam came screaming towards Talbumasuk. The Arrancar Lord acted in panic, winding up taking a grazing glance along the outside of his right arm. Urahara was completely unharmed. How? Talbumasuk grunted as he worked healing Kido on his injury. Urahara blew up what appeared to be a balloon, but what turned out to be, or rather what looked like, a blow-up doll of himself. Talbumasuk was confused. A portable Jigai? What? Talbumasuk was both confused and disturbed. It's exactly what it sounds like, Urahara said as he deflated the object, but it's so difficult to use that this is just a prototype. I'm the only one who can use it. He dropped the Jigai abruptly and actually gave Talbumasuk a serious glare, speaking with a tone that matched, but why don't I drop the acts and concentrate on winning for once? It seems like I won't be able to hold back against you or take it easy. Tactics and traps are effortless. It's as Lelouch and I predicted. You are indeed strong. That attack you used just now left the head captain, if I had to guess, at about 50 to 60% of his power. I doubt he'd even be able to hold Bankai with those wounds. However, that's why I concentrated on playing the battle as cautious as you. If we're going to take you down, then a strategy is just wasting time. A wise man once said sometimes you have play on the enemy's level and by their rules in order to win. So if you are going to attack with full force and use muscle over mind, then that's exactly what I'm going to do, and together the head captain and I are going to beat you. Urahara's spiritual power exploded in a wide array. Even Lelouch felt it from the distance. Anohana was forced to put a barrier up over the area so that Urahara's Ryotsu didn't affect her patients. Urahara then said one word, one measly, simple word, but, when said by the shopkeeper, was a word that, once said, would mean that all hell had broken loose and, once heard, would make even the great Thulhu cringe in terror. Urahara held up his sword perpendicular with his body at chest level. Bankai. In a flash of red light the entire battlefield was dyed in crimson. To be continued. Chapter 78, Alon of the Destruction. Third-person POV. Lelouch's Bakudo lost visibility of Urahara, Talbumasuk, and Yamamoto. All he could see was a thick red smoke that completely covered the area around the three of them. Inside the smoke Urahara stood without any changes to his appearance. The only thing that seemed to have changed was the area around him, Talbumasuk, and Yamamoto. Benihime no Kiri Okoku, Crimson Princess of the Misty Kingdom. This entire space, Talbumasuk-san, is my Bankai. The area inside the smoke, or mist as it were, was thick and dense in some places and thin and non-existent in others. It stretched out across the sky and had no floor beneath the swirling mist, or sky above it, but Urahara could easily correct that with a single thought if Talbumasuk tried to escape. Talbumasuk took the time to look left and right. "That's it?" he asked. He summoned one sword and fired a green continuous beam towards the mist, but it shot right through instead of deteriorating the mist and dissolving it like Talbumasuk wanted it to do. "What? Did you think you could destroy Benihime's four walls by accelerating its existence?" Urahara asked in serious monotone. "How naive. Benihime's walls are no more than mist controlled by the very neurons in my brain. I control everything in this entire area. Against Aizen it would have never worked. Kyoka Suijutsu could make Benihime work against me, but against you, it's very potent." Urahara glanced at Talbumasuk and made a declaration. He held up Benihime at a 45-degree angle. "Tatsumaki. Benihime gave a momentary glow and suddenly thick red mist shot towards Talbumasuk as forceful as Kyan's Nejabana's Ajisai Daikojui and as sharp as the blades of Byakuya's Senbonzakura, controlling the area like the ash of Rainjiku's Hainko. Urahara's Bankai acted as if it combined the elements of all three of those Zanpakuto into one power, but there was more to it than just that, as Talbumasuk would soon learn. As Talbumasuk used his Zeko no Sozo to put himself on better standing, Yukatake arrived at the assistance of Hitsugaya Toshiro, who so far hadn't gotten a scratch against Yemi, but at the same time wasn't making any progress. Yemi's mighty muscles broke out of whatever ice Hitsugaya lay on them, and every time Hitsugaya dove in close for a direct attack, Yemi would almost swat him away pretty effectively. When the young captain saw his white-haired captain-in-arms show up, figuring Lelich must have sent him, he already could figure what Lelich's thoughts were. All Arrancar and Minos alike had a Zero, and considering the massive size of Yemi and the power behind just his Ballas, Hitsugaya figured that Yemi's Zero had to be particularly devastating, and that's just the sort of thing that put Yukatake as the primary choice to counteract Yemi. Hitsugaya, of course, realized Yemi preferred his physical attacks more than anything else, so it was a simple matter of goading him to use his Zero. And for the child prodigy, he figured it would be easy to work Yemi's stupidity to his advantage. Hitsugaya explained the plan to Yukatake, who agreed that it was simple, but effective. Hitsugaya sighed. "This isn't really my style, but here goes nothing." "Oi!" he shouted at Yemi. "Is that a tail, or is your anus growing a tumor?" Yemi looked more confused than angry. "Perhaps our large friend's intelligence requires you to use a less sophisticated vocabulary, Toshiro-san," Yukatake smiled at him. Right." Hitsugaya tried again. "You couldn't Zero the sky even if it was larger than it already is." "What? I can so Zero the sky." Yemi aimed up, not even at Yukatake and Hitsugaya, and charged a Zero. Yukatake got right in his way, and Yemi fired only to get the attack reflected right back at him. In the instant that Hitsugaya went slashing by Yemi's left side and cut off all of his legs, toppling Yemi over. There was a magnitude that measured 8.1 as Yemi tumbled over onto the ground. That was relatively easy," Hitsugaya said as he and Yukatake stood behind Yemi. "Shall we finish him off?" Yukatake asked. "He looks relatively finished to me," Hitsugaya said. "His Ryotsu isn't decreasing fast enough to warrant victory," Yukatake said. "Then I'll go for the head," Hitsugaya declared, and flew in only for a surge of Ryotsu to flow out, red in color as Yemi roared. His body began to morph, and he stood up as he doubled, no tripled in size. He was so tall now that Hitsugaya and Yukatake were staring him right in the face. He had now only 2 arms and 2 legs and was completely healed. He looked like King Kong with a skull face. "Now you've made me angry. You won't like me angry." Yemi grabbed a skyscraper and chucked it at Yukatake and Hitsugaya. They dodged, but it flung forward with such force that it smashed against the barrier and disintegrated on contact rather than banging against it and falling to the ground. Yukatake and Hitsugaya exchanged looks with each other as they prepared to fight the enraged Zero Espada. While this was going on, Kendra was finding herself in a tough spot against Victor and Diego's gang attack. She could dodge and counter Diego's projectiles, but they were almost always a setup for a strike from Victor at her blind side. The maneuver had worked twice, and Kendra had a slash along her right arm and across her stomach. It wasn't that she kept falling for the same trick over and over again, it's that the tactic in question made it impossible for her to do anything else other than dodge and counter before either blocking or getting hit by Victor. She never knew when Diego was going to stop and never knew when Victor was going to come in, only that he would come in from where she could not see. The attacks were swift and it was getting on her nerves. She had to come up with a plan, or at the very least needed some help, and she couldn't ask for that from Yolanda or Yasiai, they were too injured. She continued dodging Diego's projectiles, and Victor's strike was about to come in when finally aid reached her in the form of a blonde with a regent hairstyle and a hook-shaped shikai as he blocked Victor's blade. "Kira-san," Kendra recognized the 3rd Division Fukotaiko. "Looks like you could use some help, Kendra," Izuru told her. "Yes, thank you for coming, but they're fast. It'll be difficult for the 2 of us since your speed pales in comparison to mine." "No offense," Kendra said to her comrade in arms. "None taken, though I didn't come here by myself." "Top you." The declaration came from behind Diego as a gust of wind blasted him and a ninja-esque girl with ponytail green hair appeared and formed up along Izuru and Kendra. Sorry I'm late, Fukutaiko. You didn't seem like you needed me at first, but then I saw these really pretty flowers and... It's okay Naomi, you're here now. That's all that matters. 3 against 2, that's hardly fair, Diego half shrugged. Fair? This is a war, not some spar or match, Izuru responded. War is not meant to be fun. War is filled with despair. It's a way to curb people to believe in the non-violent path. Victor only now drew away from Izuru. You make it sound like it is our desire to fight. True, Diego and Spargasama enjoy battle while they are in it, but we would all prefer not to fight if we don't have to, but a Tremere Talbumasuk is leading us on a path that conflicts with the path of the Soul Society. We are modified hollows, you are Soul Reapers. By our very nature we are enemies. This age-old conflict will never be laid to rest. In part that is all this is, and that is why we choose to fight. Then there is nothing more than need be said, Izuru said, staring at Victor. Kendra, you and Naomi have teamwork, so you two should take the flyer. I'll handle the katana-wielding guy over here. I was about to suggest the same thing, Kendra smirked from behind her face mask. Let's go Naomi. Right. The two took off after Diego, leaving Izuru and Victor to do battle. I believe in the path I have chosen, Izuru said to Victor. Do you? Talking is pointless. We shall let our blades speak for us, Victor said, swinging his long katana at Izuru. As you wish. Izuru rushed off into the fight and clashed his blade against Victor's, who parried and struck forward at Izuru. Izuru jumped back, but Victor slashed up and just barely nicked Izuru in the chest. He then did a front flip with his body, creating a spiral of slashes. Too easy, Izuru thought to himself. He stood his ground and let Wabisuk to take all of the blows from Victor's assault. It clashed about 5 times before Victor swung head over heels again and gravity pulled him straight to the ground. What's going on? He grunted as he tried to lift his sword out of the ground. I can't lift my sword out of the ground. Based on common sense, I'd say you're finding your sword too heavy to hold, but that's just as it should be. Izuru landed in front of his opponent. Wabisuk doubles the weight of whatever it cuts. If it cuts it again, the weight is doubled again, and so on and so forth endlessly. So my sword is worthless against you? Victor asked. Yes, Izuru responded. I see, Victor responded. Then I will just have to take you on barehanded. Victor's arms glowed and his sword burst into 4 pieces. His arms and legs were suddenly coated with a pair of black and white gauntlets and greaves. He came at Izuru with a furious rapid-fire punch, but Izuru just stood and blocked with Wabisuk. Aren't you going to fight back? Victor asked with a grin. When Izuru didn't respond, he exclaimed, how boring. Victor emerged over Izuru's head with the use of Sonido and attempted to stomp on his face with his foot, but as he came down his arm was dragged to the ground and Victor couldn't even muster the strength to pull it up. This can't be. I told you that Wabisuk doubles the weight of whatever it cuts. I never said that only applied to weapons. Izuru bore down upon Victor like a solemn, piteous Grim Reaper. No. Stay back. Victor shouted. With his arm stuck in the ground, he couldn't combine his arms to fire a Zero nor move with Sonido. You chose this path, there is no turning back. Izuru held up his sword and prepared to bring it down like a scythe to smite his enemy. While Izuru finished off Victor, Kendra and Naomi fought against Diego. With the two of them on him, Kendra figured the tables would turn, but Diego proved he was very effective at dealing with 2 opponents. He would toss projectiles out at both Naomi and Kendra whenever they approached, and if one got too close he'd just use Sonido or he'd fire off the thrust inside the mechanism on his back, allowing him to move without the use of his limbs. He was toying with them and it was pissing Kendra off. Naomi, well, she was just being herself. Come on, do we really have to fight? Can't we just go to a restaurant and have a nice dinner or something? Diego chuckled. No dice, Naomi said, holding up her tonfa in its powered-up form. You're the Soul Society's enemy and that's all we need to be required to take you down. Diego sighed. Too bad, I figured with a good-looking, humanistic form I'd be popular, but it's always the same thing. My bad luck just doesn't know when to quit. Diego drew out 3 more projectiles in each hand. Very well, guess I'll have to really try now. Diego disappeared and came at Kendra and Naomi from above and fired out his projectiles at once. They dodged and he began pulling more one right after the other so quickly his hands looked like blurs. Even with Kendra and Naomi's high-level speed, Diego had them on the ropes. What's the matter, can't keep up? Unfortunate, because I can go even faster. The projectile began flying out so quickly that the assassins were both pierced and sent flying into the nearby corporate building, pinned above the decks. And here's the finale. Diego whipped out a really big projectile and prepared to launch it at Kendra and Naomi when a gigantic samurai fist came out of nowhere and punched him clean into a nearby billboard and right through it. That attack, Kendra recognized as she freed herself and Naomi. She looked down on the ground. Although he was injured and in grievous pain, Captain of Squad 7 Komamura Seijin had come to help the two assassin girls out. Diego got up and saw the furry canine captain. Well, who let the dogs out? He joked. You came off my Shikai rather effortlessly. I don't know if that's because I'm injured or you're just a tenacious enemy, but it does not matter. I will make up for my earlier blunder. I will act before I allow an ally to die again. I will show you no mercy, Arrancar. Bankai. Seijin went straight to Bankai. Although his arm was just barely reconnected to his body by Anohana and his tire-sized chest wound was still healing, Seijin was going to give the battle all he had to ensure Kendra and Naomi's survival. Heh, the bigger they are the harder they fall. Diego began tossing out rapid-fire projectiles, but they just bounced off Kokugyo Tenjin Myo's large sword. Seijin belted Diego with a powerful left hook and sent him flying into another building. Diego came off it like it was nothing. Wow, he throws a semi-decent punch. That really hurt, he said as he massaged his jaw. He took off back into the battle as Seijin swung down at him with his sword, but Diego dodged the large incoming blade and ran up the length of it. Seijin brought his opposite hand down, but Diego got in between the gaps in the giant's fingers and went up for the head and began riddling Komamura's giant's eyes with projectiles, but Komamura placed his hand over his face and guarded himself and the giant with his hand before attempting to swat Diego out of the air. Whoa, easy big fella, Diego exclaimed as he flipped backwards through the air. The Arrancar was so concentrated on Komamura's Bankai that he failed to take notice of Kendra coming up behind him. Your fight ends here. Rain down. Kendra called out her Zanpakuto's special power to launch fireballs at Diego. He swatted them away with projectiles, but Kendra came up behind him right in his space and, as she predicted, Diego turned in her direction. She kicked him hard in the chest. His thruster flipped him over backwards through the air and Kendra came launching forward. Diego launched a few projectiles, but as Kendra neared him she tore away at the last second only for Diego to realize that he had fallen for the old bait and switch as Seijin's sword came down upon him, smiting him and splitting him in half. Kendra dropped down to Komamura's level to thank him for his assistance. You're quite welcome, Otomeka Fukotaiko, he told her, but there is no reason to thank me. To defend the lives of others is the job of a Soul Reaper. I wish to see the lives of no more of our comrades' lives taken on the battlefield today. He sealed his Bankai and suddenly felt woozy falling over. Komamura Teiko. Kendra eased him to the ground. I believe that'll be it for me for today's battle. I need to rest and let my injuries heal as Anohana Teiko asked me to, Seijin responded. Rest easy then, Komamura Teiko, we can handle ourselves from here, Kendra told him. The wolfish captain then closed his eyes and fell asleep. Meanwhile at the battle between Sparga and Stefan the match was getting intense. Both combatants were starting to chip away at each other. Stefan had taken his first hit of the day when he was unprepared for just how much speed Sparga gained after ditching his overcoat. Still, it was nothing that the leader of a squad based on stealth couldn't match. Both though recognized it when Diego and Victor bit the bullet. Sparga didn't seem distracted though. As Stefan dodged a bullet from the white-haired Espada, went in close and clashed against Sparga's bayonet, he spoke to him. You're not bothered by the deaths of your allies. I'll have plenty of time to grieve after the fact. Besides, I still have one left. I am very bothered by the fact that my subordinates were killed, but it also means that you all are strong and if I beat you, I'm going to get revenge on the ones that killed my comrades. Sparga slid the base of his barrel up over Stefan's blade and aimed the gun at his face. It's as simple as that. He fired off a shot. Stefan quite literally dodged the bullet, but as the gunshot rang out, Shahei could hear it from his location as his battle with Gloria continued to drag out. Her scythe skills were extraordinary and it bothered Shahei that he had to face such a strong opponent. He didn't want to have to resort to Shikai. He wanted to consult Lelich, but he didn't think that Gloria would allow him to be distracted with the way she was keeping on him like she was. He had done well not to get injured so far, but he was sweating profusely, it was starting to get in his eyes. The blonde Arrancar flipped her scythe forward a full 720 degrees. Shahei blocked both strikes and the follow-up spin strike with his sealed Zanpakuto. He then flicked off the exploding band around his upper arm and let the explosion distract her while he put distance between the two of them, descending to the bridge towards the ground beneath them. "Something the matter, Hisagi, you seem conflicted." Lelich contacted him. "Sensei, boy am I glad to hear from you," Shahei responded. "I didn't want to distract you, but you seem clear for right now. She's high up in the air, but if you don't go after her quick she'll find another target." Lelich told him. "I know, I'll make this quick," Shahei said. "What's bothering you?" Lelich asked him. "It's my Zanpakuto. I know its power could turn this battle in my favor, but I don't want to have to use it." "I'm afraid of my own power," Shahei told him. "You're starting to sound like Arisawa Tatsuki," Lelich chuckled to himself. "I understand your situation." "Shahei," Lelich used his given name, "this is war. In war sometimes we must do things we don't want to do in order to win it. What if, during the time you hesitate, you are killed and someone else dies and they might have lived had you used your Shikai earlier? How would you feel?" Shahei's eyes tightened and became strong. He had his answer. "Thanks, Sensei, I owe you. You owe me nothing. You fought at my side bravely for 15 years and then some. This is the least I can do." "Yeah, I suppose you're right." A green aura began to give off from Shahei. Gloria flew about the air looking for her opponent when suddenly a chain with a spinning blade on it nearly split her face in half. Gloria stopped, backed up, pulled out her scythe and bashed it away before cartwheeling away from the second attack. Shahei appeared in front of her, spinning both scythe weapons. "So, finally come out to black have you?" she flirted. "This is war, if I don't go all out and I die, I will be filled with nothing but regret. I may not like my Zanpakuto, but I can't afford to be choosy with my life on the line. It's that simple," Shahei spoke seriously. Gloria laughed with a sweet smile on her face. "I like that. Since you're now going all out, why don't I do the same?" Gloria spun her scythe upside down and put her foot on the blade. Bleat, Ovaja. Sheep, there was an explosion of force as Gloria transformed into her resurrection. She obtained a sheep tail and ears and her body became covered in large, spherical, white balls of fuzz the size of cannonballs. Her face, however, became shrouded in shadow except for her right eye, which glowed bright crimson. Her arms became long and bony and opened and closed like pincers. Her legs did the same and Gloria flexed her toes on the sky. "I'm a lamb, go gentle on me," Gloria said somewhat jokingly and attacked Shahei with her arm that extended off towards him in a similar manner to Renji's Bankai. Shahei bashed it away with his right-hand scythe and sent the left one spinning towards Gloria. She fired off her fuzz balls like boulders at Shahei's weapon, stopping it as he sailed towards her and Shahei was forced to call it back. She then disappeared and got right behind him. He turned and bashed her arms away, then he kicked her stomach and nearly cracked his leg bones as he realized that the fuzz on her, though there was hair, surrounded boulder-like spheres, camouflaging a supply of projectiles. Shahei was pelted with a blitz of said boulders from Gloria's body, bruising him severely. As Shahei went sailing backwards through the air being pummeled by her body, Gloria snaked her arm through the blitz and grabbed the Fukutaiko by the throat and squeezed, choking him and also cutting into his neck with her sharp claws. Shahei's Ryutsu was the only thing keeping Gloria squeezing all the way through and severing his head from his body, but Shahei could feel his conscience slowly start to fade as he found it impossible to draw breath. To make matters worse, he suddenly saw a red glow form in between Gloria's hand and his neck. Shahei gasped and made to struggle like a fish out of water, but there was nothing he could do to escape. Zero. The powerful beam went off at point blank and Shahei's head was disintegrated right from his shoulders. his body dropped into the river. Everyone felt it when Shihei went down. From Izuru, to Disan, to Lelouch, to the rest of the phantoms, everyone felt Shihei's riot so suddenly disappear. Hisagi, we will avenge you. Lelouch gave the order for a single reinforcement who he knew would never let him down, Susanna. Though only a third seat, she had the position with a superior who was already in Bankai training to master it, and her current superior actually had Bankai. Susanna was easily vice-captain level, and she had more than twice Shihei's as a seated officer. If she needed backup, Lelouch would send it out, but Lelouch had faith in his most loyal subordinate to win. Susanna appeared and immediately called out Reimei Inoto and prepared to avenge her fallen comrade. When he realized Hisagi's death, Tisan became enraged, but kept it internal. Grimjo, already in resurrection, was unprepared when the 9th Division captain suddenly let loose his Bankai. However, while Shihei had been defeated and killed, currently Rangiku, Momo and Kyokaku's trio was at an advantage. Tabayum. Momo launched a fireball at Sun, who deflected it, but the fireball was deflected at such an angle that Kyokaku lobbed an oil bomb right at it, causing a large burst of flame. Apache used a Zero right through the fire to hit Kyokaku. Growl, Hanko. Rangiku used her ash to protect Kyokaku from the attack and then overtook Apache's Zero and slammed her into a large nearby building. Kaed Yoteho. Kyokaku fired her energy blast right at Mila Rose, and the Aaron Carr used her own Zero to counter, only for Momo to whack her in the leg with Tabayum, tripping her and forcing Mila to fire at the ground as Kyokaku's cannon beam came shooting in. Bakudo 39, in Kosen. The energy that blasted past Mila Rose into Momo's shield was reflected right back at the Aaron Carr. Mila turned and swung at Momo, dripping with blood, but Momo was already gone, having cast the shield and disappeared. Hanko then struck Mila in the back, sending her careening down by Apache. Sun was standing nearby, rather unscathed, looking disappointingly at her companions. Not a word, Apache grumbled. I wasn't going to say anything, Sun said. You were thinking it, that's bad enough, Mila Rose said as she got to her feet. Man, Apache rubbed her head, do we really have to go all out on these twerps? It doesn't seem like we have much choice, Sun put her hand to her mouth. Mila Rose grumbled, well then let's get this over with. Mila Rose and the others prepared to release their forms. Thrust, Kierva. Apache shouted. Strangle to death, Anaconda. Sun declared. Devour, Leona. Mila Rose roared. The three of them emerged in their release forms. Awesome, now the real fight starts, Kyokaku smirked with glee. I wouldn't be so eager if I were you. We're a lot stronger now. Apache stated. Yeah, well bring it on. Kyokaku encouraged. Oh, it's already brought, sister. The 3-on-3 clash began again. Kyokaku started off by creating a bomb of electricity with her gauntlet and chucking it at Apache. The antlered Aaron Carr attempted to bash it away, but it exploded on contact. Momo went at Sun with Tabayum, bashing the tree-shaped sword against Sun's arms before igniting the weapon and blasting the weapon in Sun's face. Rangiku used Hanko to surround Mila Rose and attack her. The dark-skinned brunette used her Zero to break through, but Rangiku was already behind her. Hado 33, Sakasui. She blasted the Aaron Carr right in the back. The trio of Soul Reapers united again back to back. Their teamwork had been coordinated from their days in the Phantoms, and although Kyokaku never set foot on the battlefield during that time, she had grown accustomed to group fighting during her days as a Soul Reaper. She was starting to think if Lelouch planned it from the start this very fight that he would have her, Rangiku and Momo fighting as a trio. Kyokaku-san, stay on my 3, Momo told her. Got it, Kyokaku had no idea what Momo was planning, but she trusted her teammate. Want me on your 6? Rangiku asked Momo. Momo shook her head. Just keep all 3 of them busy for a little while, okay? She asked. Rangiku nodded. She knew Momo had to have a decent plan. She was as gifted as Lelouch in the planning department even before he took her under his cape. Hanko. Rangiku surrounded Apache with her ash and kept her occupied by holding the ash in place. Meanwhile Momo kept leading Kyokaku in many different directions and asked Kyokaku if she could delay the detonations of her explosives. Kyokaku's response was, "Who do you think you're talking to?" While Momo worked out her plan with Kyokaku, Rangiku used Hanko to surround the three Aaron car, but the broke out of it with ease with a combined zero and pushed her back. Mila Rose kicked her in the back. Sun Sun grabbed her with her fanged tail in the shoulder and Apache hammered her over the head. Rangiku managed to get back up. She wondered if she could hold up properly against these three long enough for Momo and Kyokaku, but a shot from Tabayam and Momo and Kyokaku leaping back into the fray kept her from receiving any more damage. Kyokaku hoisted her superior in rank's arm over her shoulder. Momo signaled for the three of them to retreat, and as she predicted, the enemy pursued, all three of them. Momo had them chase her and Kyokaku over a large, rectangular brick building before the three of them landed in the alleyway between that building and the next one over. They landed on a Bakudo 37, Tsurubashi that Momo had connected using some holes she punched in the side of the buildings with her Zanpakuto. As the Aaron car loomed overhead, Momo signaled Kyokaku. "Now!" she declared. Kyokaku activated the explosives she set off at a few junctions in Momo's Hado 12, Fushibai concealed by Bakudo 26, Kyoko, her sensei's favorite Bakudo. Momo and the others quickly ducked under Tsurubashi, using it as a tent to conceal themselves from the blast as both buildings got blown to scrap with Apache, Sun Sun, and Mila Rose caught in the middle of it. It was like she said earlier, teamwork, pragmatic tactics, and lots of explosions. After the explosion there was a declaration of, "Hado 4, Byakurai." Momo pierced a hole in her Tsurubashi and tore it up from beneath the rubble as she, Rangiku and Kyokaku got to their feet. "Nice going, Hinamari-kun, that was really something," Rangiku complimented. "Heh, don't give her all the credit," Kyokaku said with a smirk, "wouldn't have been possible without my Zanpakuto. Sure, Shak Keiho would have been a good substitute, but it wouldn't have gotten the boom we just experienced. Personally I think it was a little too flashy, we could have been caught in that," Rangiku input. "That's why we used Tsurubashi to both break our fall and protect us," Kyokaku said, taking out her pipe and sticking it in her mouth. "Oh, you just like explosions," Rangiku huffed. "And, your point?" Kyokaku asked, lighting her pipe. No sooner had she done that though did Halibal's Fraxion emerge from the ground like Aaron Carr undead. They tried to attack her, but Momo was prepared. "In Kosen!" she shouted, and the three clanged against the shield and were repelled. Kyokaku then took her fist and delivered a right hook to Apache, an uppercut to Mila Rose, and a hard straight punch to Sun Sun's gut. Angrily the trio retreated into the sky. They were looking pretty banged up. Each had a swollen. "God damn it!" Apache shouted, clutching her swollen cheek, "that bitch hits like a freaking truck. I'm still pissed about the goddamn trap. We walked right into that," Mila Rose gritted her teeth. "Looks like we'll have to resort to Plan B," Sun Sun advised, "we won't make any progress otherwise." Apache rubbed her head furiously. "Arg, we're really gonna waste him on these three. It's either that or get blasted and punched out by that scrawny pipsqueak and the hag with the gauntlet," Mila Rose stated. "Grr, fine. A Tremere-sama always says that at least when you commit overkill you're thorough. Okay, let's do it." The three of them held out their left arms and focused them on a single point in the air. Quimera Parka. From the charging and buildup of energy, Apache, Sun Sun, and Mila Rose sacrificed their left arms to create a giant, nearly 8-meter tall creature with Apache's fur, hooves, and antlers, Mila Rose's mane and Sun Sun's tail. Its torso was thick and light purple and it an 8-pack. The creature was more massively muscular than Stefan in his Bankai. "What is that thing?" Momo felt like she was staring down a black abyss of death. "Looks like some sort of hybrid creature, but it's so powerful," Kyokaku gaped, pipe dropping from her mouth to ground. "Even if you were to combine the Ryotsu of all three of those bitches up there it wouldn't nearly be this powerful." Both women were firmly chopped on the head. "Hey! What's the big idea?" Kyokaku asked. Rangiku gave a serious look. "Terror and fear won't do any of us any good right now. We need to work together and beat this thing. Rangiku-san's right, just follow my lead and we'll." Pow! A fierce sweep uppercut from the creature knocked Momo high into the air, so high that the details of her figure were lost as Rangiku and Kyokaku looked up. The creature's other massive fist knocked Momo back down to the ground. He then prepared to slam his fist down onto her and really severely damage her, but Kyokako got right in the way, stopping him with her gauntlet. "No!" she shouted. She struggled to push the creature back. The big lummox wasn't even pushing forward, but she couldn't even push it back or away from her. She looked at Rangiku. "Well, don't just stand there, do something." "Alright." Hanko. Rangiku had been slightly shaken up from the sudden assault on Momo. She wove her ash around the creature, but suddenly the creature's tail came out of nowhere and smacked her across the street through a window into another building. "Lelouch, we need help badly." Kyokako didn't know if Lelouch could hear her at all, but she knew that he was watching the battlefield as best he could. She also knew it would only be a matter of time before the creature decided to stop letting her struggle. Heido 31, Shakkeiho. Kyokako looked to her right. Katetsukian, Sasakaibe Kojiro, Iba Tetsuzumon, and Keshiba Ryu were coming up over the horizon. "Bite, Gonryomaru," Sasakaibe declared, and then blasted the creature with a bolt of lightning at his arm where Rangiku had tried to hit it earlier and managed to do a small amount of damage. The creature immediately turned its attention to the newcomers. Kyokako dropped her sore arm at her side in relief, but only for herself. She had a gut feeling that Kian, Ryu, Iba, and Sasakaibe wouldn't be able to beat this monster. More importantly, Momo needed a healer fast. As luck would have it, Isane showed up. "Katetsu Fukotaiko." Kyokako saw her. "Teiko sent me here to help." "How is she?" she asked Kyokako. "I can't breathe," Momo whined in panic. "Hang in there, Hinamori, things are going to be okay," Isane told her. "I'm going to stay right here, in case that thing decided to come back this way," Kyokako said. "What about Matsumoto-san, where is she?" Isane said. "Rangiku got thrown through a window. I don't sense her to be in critical condition, so she's probably still conscious and stable. If I had to guess, she's probably watching the same scene we are, clutching whatever shoulder she landed on, panting heavily, and knowing she can't go back out there." Interestingly enough, Kyokako was 100% right. "Hey Alon, what are you doing?" Apache shouted at the creature as it approached Sasakaibe, Ryu, and Kian. "Kill those other bitches first. You know he can't hear you," Sun told her. "Besides, let him do what he wants, he wasted those other three like it was nothing." "He'll do the same thing to those three," Mila Rose boasted. Ryu walked forward and yanked his Zanpakuto out and held it in front of him. "Show your loyalty, Yabantsuyose." In Ryu's hands a gigantic hammer, short on length, but with a large head, appeared in his hands. It had a corn-yellow handle and the red Ryutsu seeped around the base of the head. Ryu charged headfirst towards Alon and whacked him in the ankle with his weapon, creating a thunderous impact. However, it didn't seem to do much of anything other than make Alon angry, and kicked Ryu with his hoof before scooping him up and throwing him to the side. "That thing is a monster," Iba exclaimed. "Well, we gotta take it out somehow," Kian declared. "That thing just threw one of my squad's former more prominent fighters into the dirt without doing much of anything," Iba shouted, turning around. "Fuck this. We can't beat that thing." As if on cue, Alon leapt from the ground and landed right in front of Sasakaibe, Iba, and Kian, crouched down, before standing up. Hi there," Iba said, knees shaking. "Listen, could you not destroy us? You know, for the most manly man in Seoul society, you're a bit cowardly when it comes down to it, isn't that right, Sasakaibe Fukotaiko?" There was no response. Sasakaibe Fukotaiko. Sasakaibe was with Iba on this one and just quaked in his boots. Alon's Ryutsu was monstrous. Kian sighed. Never have a man do a woman's work. She leapt into the air. "Now pounce, USA." Fling. With a single finger, Alon flicked Kian far away into a building where she crashed through a brick wall and lost consciousness. Iba and Sasakaibe then proceeded to run away like cowards. Meanwhile, Ichigo was standing more than 10 blocks away, still meditating. "Ichigo!" Lelouch called out him telepathically. For someone who was very eager to go into battle, Ichigo had showed remarkable restraint under Lelouch's observance. Ichigo held steadfast to his meditation, wondering if perhaps Lelouch was simply testing his resolution. "I have an order for you finally," Lelouch said. Ichigo's eyes opened slowly. Just point me in the direction. Ichigo had a lot of pent-up anger he wanted to unleash. He would see bloodshed for his friends' lives and injuries. There is a large creature about 8 meters tall chasing after Iba and Sasaka Fukutaiko. That is your target, Lelouch told him. Am I going in alone? Ichigo asked. That's your call, Lelouch responded. I understand, Ichigo said. Keep everyone else away from the area unless I say otherwise. That guy is mine. Following the Ryutsus of Iba and Sasakaibe, Ichigo appeared on the scene in a single step. Alon hadn't made a single step towards Iba and Sasakaibe mostly cause they hadn't gotten that far. Kyokaku, Momo, and Isane weren't that far off. So he sent Yuha. Kyokaku asked her cousin. Ichigo almost seemed to ignore Kyokaku. Like he said, about 8 meters. He eyed up Alon. Hey, are you even listening to me? Kyokaku barked at him. Keep Hinamari-san safe and don't do anything brash, Ichigo told his cousin, I'll handle things from here. He then vanished and appeared near Alon, behind the massive creature, on a street near some trees. Oi! You! Ichigo shouted. Slowly Alon turned around to look at Ichigo. You're going down, Ichigo declared. What's this? That kid thinks he can take on Alon all by himself. Apache scoffed, is he stupid? Don't they realize Alon is unstoppable if you face him alone? There's no way a single Soul Reaper can defeat a creature born of 3 Arrancar. Sun said. Ichigo's eyes are laser-focused as he stared up at the giant chimera. Take your best shot, he taunted. Alon complied and took a fierce punch at Ichigo. The force tore up the street, broke dozens of windows, and kicked up so much dust that Ichigo's image was lost in the midst. What a moron. He didn't even move. Mila Rose scoffed. However, as it turned out, Ichigo didn't have to dodge. As the dust cleared, Ichigo was seen holding Tensou Zanjutsu down at an angle, like a fang hanging from the gums of a jaw. He had fully stopped Alon's attack. Hallibal's Fraxion were all shocked to see him block Alon so effortlessly. Just who the hell is this guy? Apache muttered. From his position, Ichigo swung up and slashed Alon's knuckles, destabilizing the giant chimera. My turn, Ichigo said calmly. He held Tensou Zanjutsu down at his right side with both hands and charged energy into it. He rotated the blade forward 90 degrees and held the blade high above his head. Getchuga Tensho. The shockwave released from the blade and the Moonfang ripped towards Alon. To be continued. Chapter 79, Nelliel and Sparga, Nothing Left to Lose. Third-person POV. Getchuga Tensho. Blast of energy barreling towards him, Alon reacted to Ichigo's assault, by ripping up a clump of dirt and chucking it at Ichigo, but it was cleaved clean in half by his Getchuga and the rest of the blast smashed Alon right in the chest, creating a deep laceration across his chest. It wasn't the damage Ichigo was expecting, but he didn't care. He used Shunpo to get into the air at a high altitude so that he was level with Alon's face. Your arrow's pretty thick and you've got strong Ryutsu. What's your name? Alon didn't respond. He just looked at Ichigo with the same blanket expression he always did. I see. Quiet one, eh? Well, it doesn't matter to me. Ichigo flared his Ryutsu and swung his blade out towards Alon, pointing it at him. My name is Kurosaki Ichigo. Remember it, because it'll be the last name you hear spoken to you before you're gone. What the? Relax, Mila Rose said to Apache, so he's the big shot wild card that a Tremere-sama's been chatty about. It doesn't make a lick of difference. All enemies are the same to Alon. That orange-haired kid doesn't stand a chance. Ichigo and Alon stared each other down for a little while longer until Ichigo moved his free hand to his wrist and charged forward to begin the conflict. Alon swung forward, missing Ichigo by a very large margin, eliciting surprised looks from his creators. Ichigo swung his sword and ejected another Getchuga from his sword and caused Alon to stumble into the building nearby. Alon threw the upper half of the building at the Bankai-wielding teen. Ichigo, rather than slicing the building, leapt onto it and ran up the inclined length of it, getting in between Alon and the sun. At the peak of his jump he dove towards Alon as he held his sword with both his hands, prepared to swing it and release the energy on a dime. Alon put up a hand as though Ichigo were a baseball the Chimera was going to catch and crush. Ichigo of course saw this and cut off 2 of Alon's fingers as he moved so fast that his Getsuga he released trailed behind him as Ichigo moved faster than the technique could travel. Using the skills Lelouch had taught him, Ichigo held out his blade and, before the Getsuga could dissipate, absorbed it back into his blade. He wasn't about to let the unused energy go to waste. Like a serpent from the grass, Alon's tail leapt up from the ground and made to ensnare Ichigo, but the teen was too fast and was gone before the snake even got close to reaching him. Ichigo was on the roof of the building in front of Alon, waiting for the large beast to make a move. With his good arm Alon took a line drive punch at Ichigo. Ichigo, when he believed the timing to be right, leapt over the massive fist of his opponent and ran up the length of Alon's arm. He jumped off the creature's shoulder, turned and fired the half-powered Getsuga he had reabsorbed into the massive Chimera. Alon's quick striking tail leapt at Ichigo, but his enhanced reflexes allowed the teen to narrowly dodge the snake and with a fierce swing Ichigo sliced a nasty gash into the snake's neck. "Damn it Alon! Don't let this substitute get the better of you!" Apache shouted. "Yelling is pointless," Sun Sun said, "besides, that Soul Reaper will learn what happens when you injure our pet soon enough." As Alon attempted to take a spinning clothesline punch at Ichigo the teen ducked underneath the attack and then slashed one of Alon's antlers right off. The large, bony object crashed to the ground and impacted upon the pavement. Ichigo stood without a flicker of emotion reflected in his gaze. "I've got a lot of pent-up aggression burning in me and I'm taking it all out on you," Ichigo said. "You might be big and powerful, but my Bankai increases my speed to several times more than that of my Shikai when compared to my human body. Before my training I thought advanced speed was all that was needed in a fight, but there's one more thing that goes hand in hand with high speed, reflex. And thanks to Lelouch my reflexes match my Bankai's speed, so for someone like you that telegraphs his moves, despite your massive speed and power, I can dodge or counter easily." Ichigo gripped his sword tightly and looked over his shoulder. "I won't lose to the likes of you." Stomping to turn around Alon looked at Ichigo and the scowl upon his face. He saw the antler on the ground and looked at Ichigo. He looked back at the antler on the ground and then at the wound on his chest. He then looked back at Ichigo and then back to his chest. He raised his full-fingered hand like he was a child answering a question to a teacher and beat the arm against the wound Ichigo had inflicted. He then screamed at the top of his lungs and transformed into a disfigured hulking giant. All of the damage Ichigo had inflicted, except for the antler he cut off, undid itself, and Alon grew out to nearly twice his original size. His right arm became big and bulky and Ichigo just turned around and watched it happen with the same unfazed scowling glare. He had learned, thanks to Lelouch, that it was pointless to become shocked or reactive to an enemy using an unused power. Not everyone will fight with their full strength right off the bat. To be effective in battle, one must hold back their true potential by at least a third so that when the enemy plays a trump card you can too. "Yeah, I think I know what you mean Lelouch," Ichigo thought to himself putting his hand up to his face, "so this is your trump card big guy. Well here is mine." Ichigo hollow-eyed on the spot. He watched Alon carefully, waiting for the big guy to make his move. Alon did by attacking Ichigo with his over-muscled arm, complementing it with a bestial roar. Ichigo simply swung down his blade with both hands on the handle and let his own energy surge around him, or rather that's what it appeared to be. In reality, Ichigo had made all the riot so that he leaked while standing still visible, which converted it into Reishi, which he would then use to power his Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo was amazed that, simply from experimenting with his Zanpakuto, how much he could learn just from sparring and learning how to properly control spirit energy. Alon's punch came rocketing forward and Ichigo let loose his powered-up Getsuga Tensho before vanishing, completely dodging Alon's attack, appearing above and behind the beast's broken antler as the Getsuga ripped through his arm. Ichigo held his blade out to absorb whatever Reishi remained of the attack after it sawed Alon in half, and then from a bird's-eye location released the full power into the Chimera's skull, knocking Alon clean into the ground. As anyone could have predicted, though, the Chimera was far from down. It reached towards Ichigo from the dust the teen had kicked up, only for Ichigo to disappear and go in at close range along Alon's chest. Quicker than even the well-trained eye could move, he took the tip of his blade and slashed it down along Alon's body and created a deep wound. Blood spattered everywhere and Ichigo, with his sword tip, tapped the ground and created a resonance between him and the ground. He began storing up spirit energy by using the ground as a bridge between his feet and the blade as though his body were a circuit. He then swung his sword up and to the side, firing the Getchuga into the air, missing Alon by a good amount. "Ha, where's that idiot aiming?" Mila Rose scoffed, only to realize that the miss was intentional as Ichigo got right into the air and then, using his blade as a bat, deflected his own attack right into Alon's chest, tearing all the way through and creating an upside-down triangular-shaped hole in Alon's body, only that the base of the triangle was rounded and the tip was sliced off, creating a narrow flat edge along the hole in Alon's torso. Angered, Alon fired a Zero at Ichigo from both of his eyes at once. Ichigo remained calm and pointed his blade at where he believed the center of Alon's head was. The tip of his blade sparked as energy gathered in the center of the blade's tip, taking a spherical shape and the color scheme of Ichigo's Getchuga. Zero de Luna. Zero of the Moon. With a blast that could rival the power of even the more powerful Espada, the blast connected and tore through Alon's blast, allowing the rest of the hulking figure's attack to pass by Ichigo harmlessly, while Ichigo's own Zero shot right through Alon's Zero and smashed him in the face, cracking the center of his mask. Still, a crack was all Ichigo needed. Using Shunpo, before Alon could react, Ichigo got right in the creature's space and drove the pommel of his sword with all of his might into the cracked mask. The crack grew wider and then burst. Twirling his weapon, Ichigo made a single small leap to get right over Alon's head and fired one last Getchuga into the Chimera's head, perfectly splitting the beast in two, destroying it. Ichigo then removed his mask. Hallible's Fraxion were dumbfounded. "I'm impossible, he beat Alon, by himself," Apache gaped. From the eastern side of the battlefield, Jin and Lelouch watched the end of the battle from one of Lelouch's cast Kakushitsujaku. "Well now, dat was pretty nifty, dear. Kid's sure has gotten a lot stronger, hasn't he?" Jin asked Lelouch. Lelouch seemed prideful at the statement. "Of course he has. It's too bad Urahara had to go and use his Bankai, now we can't see Tally fight." "Oh, that's taunt ammo for later." "Yup." Lelouch grinned at the thought of calling Talbumasuk by the embarrassing nickname Jin had handpicked for him. However, right now, other matters required tending to. "By the way, Jin," Lelouch said seriously, "why are you still against the Soul Society? Rangiku is safe and Aizen is dead. I thought he was your target. There should have been plenty of opportunities for you to assassinate Talbumasuk." "Well, at first I figured I could, but this is more fun. Besides, you sorta had more reason to kill Aizen-san in the first place, so he was just an obstacle for my real goal," Jin responded. Lelouch glanced back. "So the Hogyaku is what you're after?" Logic would dictate that standing in front of Jin was one of the worst ideas in history, but Lelouch had himself protected just in case. "If that's the case, why not go back to Hueco Mundo and get it?" Talbumasuk said he didn't bring it with him. "And just like that, ya think he leaves it unguarded. Dat guy is more intelligent than ya give him credit for." Lelouch, Jin answered. "He'll notice if I slip out the back door. He's not one easily fooled." Aizen-san was cocky, planning out his plans, feeling like nothing could stop him, so he eased up on threats. "Tall takes one out before it appears. If I make the slightest bit shifty move, then this pretty face of mine ain't gonna be so pretty anymore." "Pretty face? Has he looked in a mirror?" Lelouch cleared his throat in an over-the-top manner, indicating he wanted his Zanpakuto to be quiet. "Really shouldn't be talking about this kind of stuff with ya anyway." Jin took 2 steps back. "Why? Worried about Rangiku?" Lelouch asked. Jin's face turned sour. Lelouch continued. "You don't have to worry. With Ichigo in the general area, she'll be safe for now, but if you're really worried about her, then fear not, I've got the situation covered." Jin raised an eyebrow. Lelouch rolled his gaze to look ahead of him again. "Do you think I kept Rangiku as vice captain simply because of her skill level and good looks?" Lelouch paused. "Well, that's part of it, but not all of it. I kept Rangiku on with me all of this time because I thought that Aizen might find out about your actions, or that one of us would be forced to kill you when you finally showed your true colors. You and Rangiku are close childhood friends, and I was the individual that appeared out of nowhere. If you were to die, who do you think she would come to first for comfort? I know what it's like to lose someone important to you, so I want to be close, should she lose what means the most to her. You really do care about her, don't ya?" Jin asked a natural, if but creepy, smile on his face. She's a loyal friend and a good companion. She's got her faults, but then again so do I. I rejected most of her advances not because her blatant attempts of seduction reminded me of someone I used to know, but, well, if you do somehow manage to survive and I can get you reinstated somehow into the Godii, Lelouch turned and smiled at Jin, I think you two should be together. She deserves to know how you feel. Lelouch turned his head partly back towards the front and looked down. No, perhaps it would be better to say, if it does come out that you feel you might not make it, or you don't want to risk how you might lose her or anything, when opportunity strikes, you should take it to tell her how you feel. Take it from someone who has been forced to learn that lesson twice. You know I didn't realize today was Splurge Your Guts Day, Jin snickered. Lelouch got ticked off. Hey. I'm trying to be emotional and all you can do is make jokes. Jin shrugged, it's what I do. By the way, it's your turn to flare Ryotsu. To keep the charade that he and Jin were actually fighting, Lelouch did as the grinning bastard suggested. Back at the battleground where Ichigo had just defeated Alon, the Black Blade Soul Reaper looked at Apache, Sun, and Mila Rose before using Shunpo to get in front of them. Got any more giant beasts you wanna throw at me or do I take you three on all at once? He taunted as he swung his blade out at his side. Apache had a craze, if but nervous smile, oh you wanna take us all on, well fuck you pal. We're gonna kick your ass. Mila Rose. Sun. Let's go. The three Arrancar charged at Ichigo. Nearby, Ishine noticed his son battling the three women, keeping on the defensive, conserving his energy and watching their tactics. He's doing pretty good against your girls, Ishine said to Hannibal. Worried? Hardly, my Fraxion can take care of themselves. You should be more concerned with yourself, Soul Reaper. Hannibal said and charged at Ishine to further continue their clash. Susanna and Gloria continued to face off against each other. Currently the battle seemed like it could go either way. Susanna stood erect and thrust one arm forward, firing off a lightning bolt before switching her stance and firing one off from the other hand. Gloria fired a barrage of her body boulders at Susanna, blasting past the bolts. Susanna charged energy between her fists, raised her hands up of her head and fired forward a condensed beam of concentrated lightning. Keshohari. Plasma beam, the blast tore through Gloria's boulders. Susanna used Shunpo and got underneath her opponent. With a spinning high kick she brought her heel into the side of Gloria's jaw. Keshohari. She blasted Gloria straight through, down and away. Susanna held her wrist and charged lightning along her fingertips. Koshi Haretsu. Photon array, an endless barrage of blasts of lightning ejected from her fingertips down at Gloria. Susanna took a sweeping head-first dive as the finger-fired lasers blasted into Gloria's body and then socked the woman in the face, sending her crashing into the bridge. Susanna landed on the ground using Shunpo before her opponent did and gathered Reishi into her palm and formed it into ball of energy. Kaminari Ken. Lightning sphere, she blasted the sphere high into the air, running Gloria through and then gathered as much Reishi as she could around her into the immediate space of her Ryotsu field. Ryu. Lightning storm. As Gloria reached towards the ground, Susanna electrocuted her with her power. She stood still and waited to see if Gloria seemed to be more or less stunned senseless. What's wrong, too much stimulation for you? Susanna joked. Ironically, Gloria got up and grabbed Susanna around the waist. Hardly. Gloria gazed at her with glee from her shadow-framed face. Susanna looked at Gloria's body, there was no flesh to it. She was all bone. The boulders coated her body and gave off the impression that Gloria had a body of sorts, but in truth she was all bone with just a trick behind her sheep's clothing. Susanna saw the red flash growing in her torso. But bye. Gloria laughed and detonated the Zero. Susanna's body was cleaved in half, but to Gloria's amazement the body dissipated into a field of yellow energy. Over here. Susanna's voice came from behind the blonde Arrancar and she was seen charging a gigantic ball of energy in one fist. What? You fell for the old bait and switch. I can't believe the oldest trick in the book actually worked, but I guess it's like Lelouch says, the oldest tricks sometimes are the best to employ. She finished charging her attack and rushed forward before punching Gloria right in the abdominal area and unloading all of the lightning into her system, then backed up and with her fist made an aerial cut, shocking Gloria's entire body. Susanna's hand continued to glow as Gloria dropped to her knees. "What do you do to me, Soul Reaper bitch? All of my lightning is currently surging through your system, caught on your wool like static electricity. Even though you have no actual skin to speak of, your body isn't at all impervious to my lightning. I proved that earlier with my attack." Susanna smirked down at her opponent. "Then, you planned this from the start?" Gloria looked up at Susanna, wide-eyed. "Shocking, isn't it? When your greatest benefactor is the most brilliant mind in all of Soul Society, you tend to pick up a few things," Susanna grinned. "Then I'll just have to get rid of these." All of Gloria's boulders ejected from her body and swirled around her. Susanna leapt back a great distance as the boulders came in. Kaminari Raisin. Lightning spiral. Susanna went twirling forward, coating an electrifying aura around her body, allowing her to swat away the boulders her hands and feet impacted with as she turned, as she effectively spiraled right through Gloria's attack and ejecting a sonic boom behind her, blowing away Gloria's boulders. She then overshot Gloria's position, blowing back the Aaron car with her own technique, so now if Gloria wanted to go at Susanna, she'd catch herself in her own attack. Susanna stood panting. "I've used up a lot of energy already. I've gotta end this quickly or I must run out of steam before I'm done." Susanna closed her eyes momentarily and let a bead of sweat drip down the side of her face. "Guess I'll have to use that technique." Susanna charged energy into her hands and watched Gloria carefully as her boulders reformed around her. "I have to do this carefully. I have to get her when she's close and defenseless. This strategy won't work twice. Go." Gloria sent all of her boulders forward. "This is gonna hurt, but it's my only option." Susanna ran towards Gloria's field of boulders and she wasn't about to use her Kaminari Raisin a second time. Gloria chuckled. And just what does she think she's doing? She'll get bludgeoned badly if she just rushes in without doing anything. Gloria began directing her boulders into Susanna's body, injuring the third seat from all directions as the boulders passed by her. By the time Susanna made it through, she was injured and bruised in 9 different places. However, she made it through and she continued to run towards Gloria. "It can't be, that should have crushed just about any Soul Reaper her level. Hisagi, I now avenge you." Susanna raised her glowing arm to the ground and summoned a small hammer the size of sheet of printer paper. Kyode Kaminari. Mighty thunder. Gloria. A bolt of lightning struck the ground right on top of Gloria with massive force, electrocuting her body with enough voltage to power an entire country simultaneously for 12 minutes and still have enough left over to stun 3 dairy farms worth of cows. Susanna grinned as her hammer dissipated and she dropped to her knees, watching her enemy fall dead. Thunder dominates with a boom. She then fell over and collapsed. At the location of Sparga and Stefan's battle, the elite assassin was once again at a ranged position, dodging bullets as they rang out without stopping. Sparga's spiritual power made it so that his gun never required a reload. His own spirit energy formed the bullets in his weapon, much like Yolanda's Zanpakuto. However, as another shot rang out, he saw the lightning strike fall upon Gloria and felt her Ryotsu die away. The last of his Fraxion had fallen. Sparga gripped the trigger of his gun so hard that instead of a bullet, a beam of energy shot out. Stefan watched as the Segunda Espada seemed to be in a momentary fit of anger. "I guess that does it then, I'm the only one left. I guess I should have done this a while ago, but I was having too much fun. Maria, Nigel, Diego, Victor, Gloria, I'm sorry I let you all down, but I'm not about to fall." Stefan felt Sparga's Ryotsu spike and saw the dark indigo spiritual power emerge from the man. "Emerge from hell, El Diablo." Sparga's energy exploded outward. Stefan gasped, feeling his energy go through the roof. It was more powerful than any enemy out on the field currently, with the exception of Talbumasuk, of course. Bankai. Sparga emerged from the indigo Ryotsu cloud and stood in his resurrection, which did its namesake a good amount of service. Sparga's head now had 2 large horns growing out from his eyebrows that curved at the ends and spiraled in front of his face like misshapen ram horns. His eyes were now a bright lightning yellow and also glowing. On his back, a quartet of bat-like wings sprouted out, razor sharp. His feet were thick and clawed with a blade coming up and rising back from his ankles. His arms were thick and muscular with an armored gauntlet shaped like another arm, taking the color scheme of encrusted magma over it. He had shin guards with spikes on them like his horns on his head. Sparga's skin turned a pale purple, like a zombie. On his body was a cuirass over his chest with the symbol of what was quite possibly the outline of his own being emblazoned upon the chest plate. Sparga ejected two skinnier hands from beneath his gauntleted arms. In his upper right arm, Sparga held a long hooked blade like the mouth of a floss brush, but with spikes sticking out of the base. The blade was bronze and covered in blood. A green aura emitted from it. In his upper left hand, Sparga was holding a regular long sword with an electrifying aura around it. In his lower hand Sparga held a pair of handguns. Both were dark brown with golden plating on the sides of the barrel. This is what happens when you mess with the bull. Sparga whipped his pistols out in a plus formation, you get the horns. He opened fire on Stefan and riddled him with attacks as he kept firing off ballast from the gun and switching hands like a pro as he did so. The shots came in fast and Stefan was blasted with strikes. Sparga then struck forward and slashed Stefan across the waist with his electrified sword and then kicked him into the ground. And that's how we do it, he grinned. Stefan was down, but not out. He'd make his return to the fight once he realized what had hit him, but at this same time, Pesha and Dondokaka were starting to notice that Sparga had gotten serious. Whoa, if he's gotten serious, we'd better do the same, Pesha said, and by we, he meant him and Dondokaka. He held up his katana. It's on. Skitter, Hormiga. Ant, Pesha morphed so that 6 large legs ejected from his back and were so large that they lifted him into the air. A large thorax also grew out and ejected from Pesha's butt. His own hands obtained small pincer-like claws on the backs of them, though it didn't seem like Pesha would get anywhere near his enemy with them with the gigantic legs he had. However, the blades weren't meant for stabbing or cutting, as Yumichika would soon find out. Yeehaw! Stampede! Pesha rushed forward with massive speed towards Yumichika to crush him underfoot, but Yumichika got underneath Pesha and slashed his thorax, producing a semi-deep injury only to get kicked by Pesha's hind left leg. Pesha then bent over and rotated in place from his connecting legs and charged a zero in between his arm pincers. He blasted Yumichika right into tree. The 5th seat got up and choked only to see Pesha come charging in. He rolled to the side this time and hacked at one of Pesha's legs only for his sword to slide off on the leg on some form of sticking green fluid. What the hell is this stuff? Yumichika shouted, looking at his sword. What? Oh, that's my infinite slick. Pesha declared proudly. It's a special secretion I store up in my legs and mouth that makes anything it touches extremely slippery. Neat, huh? It's not neat, it's gross and it reeks. Yumichika. Hey, Pesha appeared to be insulted, you don't have to insult my technique. You don't see me making fun of your peacock blades, do you? Pesha pointed to Yumichika. You know what, eat my foot. Pesha lifted his front legs and smacked them right into Yumichika, pushing him back. Yumichika was now covered in the mucus-like sticking green slime. This is disgusting. Yumichika shouted. Oh, pipe down, will you? You can wash your clothes later, some of us have real problems. Shisato said, appearing on the scene, her back to Yumichika's back. From around a small house, Dondokaka came swinging his large kanabo as he stood 15 feet tall with a single eye and a fur tunic to match due to the release of his Resurrection Cyclops. Shisato dodged out of the way as the kanabo came swinging forward and pressed her back right against her ally. I don't suppose you have a plan B, Yumichika said. Who do you think I am, my captain? Shisato chastised. I don't just pull random plans out of my ass. Are you two having a lover's quarrel? Pesha asked. Want us to wait for you? We are not a lover's quarrel. Shisato snapped and leapt at Pesha and kicked him in the face and pushed him back. But you can wait for us just the same. Or better yet, she flexed her muscles and drew back her hands before thrusting them forward, palms connected together, fingers bent, you can die. Hado 73, Soren Sakasui. Shisato ejected the mighty blue blast of energy, blasting Pesha several dozen meters along the street. Shisato, when did you get so good at Kido? Yumichika asked, intrigued. Shisato gave her partner a thumbs up. I've always been a natural at Kido. I just decided to follow the unspoken squad rule about no Kido. If I was going to get the respect from you boys, I was going to fight on your level. Heck, I probably would have had my third seat position back long time ago if I had used it against Ikeku in official matches. She then saw the giant Kanabo from Dondokaka casting a shadow over the battlefield. Whoops, almost forgot about you. She leapt into the air and did a high frontal kick accompanied by a loud, Kiya. She hit in between the spikes and kicked the Kanabo up. Hado 1, show. Using the Kido, she bashed the Kido straight into Dondokaka's face, knocking him over. That won't keep them down for long, Shisato said as she landed on the ground next to Yumi Chika. We need to come up with some form of plan and quickly. Shisato, Yumi Chika began and then paused. How distracted do you think everyone else is from our fight? With the exception of my captain, I'd say pretty much everyone, she said. Why? Your captain, can he keep secrets? Yumi Chika asked. You're talking about the guy who was Zero. Of course he can, Shisato said as she folded her arms with a grin, and then a light bulb went off in her head. I don't know why you're declaring this now, but are you coming out of the closet? She asked. What? Hey. I resent that. Yumi Chika shouted. Oh, you're not. Shisato looked up and to the side and pressed her finger against her cheek. I always thought that between the feathers, you obsession with aesthetics and how close you were with Ikeku that you. I'm not gay. Yumi Chika shouted. And that's not what I was asking about to keep a secret for anyway. Even if I was, this really isn't the time or place to be discussing that now, is it? Shisato put her knuckles on her hips and swayed to one side. Well, if it's not that, then what is it? Yumi Chika sighed and held up his finger. First, promise me that what I'm about to reveal will be kept between you, me, and your captain. You're no longer an affiliate of the 11th Division and you're a skilled Kido user, so I feel comfortable revealing this around you. I promised, but what the heck are you talking about? Shisato scratched her head. Shisato, Fuji Kyojaku, is not the real name of my Zanpakuto. Yumi Chika told her. I only call it that so that it only releases part way, but that's because, well, you'll understand when you see it. At that moment Pesha came charging back in and Dondokaka got back up. Split and deviate, Rurairo Kyojaku. Azure vines ripped forward from Yumi Chika's blade. There were so many. 6 entangled Pesha's extra legs. 4 caught his regular arms and legs. 1 tied itself around his throat and another on his torso. Around Dondokaka, Yumi Chika used 3 vines each for his arms and legs and 2 for his giant Kanabo, and he wrapped one big one around his eye. Buds coated the vines and Yumi Chika had Pesha and Dondokaka completely bound. Say, hey, aren't you supposed to use this sort of technique on chicks? I feel so violated, Pesha responded. I find it amusing that you would laugh in the face of your own destruction, Yumi Chika said as he flipped his hair. Energy suddenly began to draw itself into his Zanpakuto and the buds started to turn into flowers. This is. The gears in Shisato's head began to turn. Yes, a Kido-based Zanpakuto, one that drains my opponent of all of their spirit energy, Yumi Chika said. Shisato had a realization, but wait, I thought you used this ability during the incident with Aizen. I did, but I left my victim alive, but drained him of so much that he wouldn't have died from the effects. However, I will not show the same mercy to these barbarians. He glared at Pesha. This is for my Shiakusho. Do you know how hard it is to get slime stains out of a black uniform? Nearly impossible because you can't fucking see them. Shisato took a few steps away from Yumi Chika, frightened. She didn't know Yumi Chika was so easily pissed off if someone damaged his uniform like that. In the span of a few minutes of holding and draining, Yumi Chika eventually fully drained Pesha and Dondokaka of spirit energy until they were dried up husks. A bunch of azure flowers dropped to the ground and Yumi Chika picked one up and ate the petals off one. Ah, Reishi, how magnificent, Yumi Chika marveled. Shisato picked one up and ate it and became filled with energy. She then began energetically gathering them up in her arms. Where are you going with those? Yumi Chika asked her. Where do you think? I'm going to distribute these to the injured. Shisato responded. Don't you even? I told you think was staying a secret. Yumi Chika responded. Fuck your secret. Do you realize how many people we can help with these? Shisato reprimanded. If you have a Zanpakuto like this, why do you stick around in the 11th division? Is it so you can feel good about yourself and know that you're accepted by the people around you? Your Zanpakuto would greatly benefit the 4th division with its power, even the 5th division would welcomingly accept you with their Kido emphasis. Look who's talking, Yumi Chika snapped, you stayed with us for the longest time, Miss Kido expert. I always wanted out. I'm not like you, I'm not content with staying in mediocrity, and even so my inability to use Kido is not at the cost of the mission or the greater good. You and Ikeka were a team and your ability might have been able to help him. Shisato's eyes filled with tears. Why couldn't Lelouch have picked you instead of him? Isn't not fair. Yumi Chika sighed and walked over to Shisato. He could tell that she was still upset about Ikeku. He gave her his shoulder to cry on like a gentleman. He knew she lashed out of him at that last part only because of what happened. It wasn't within Shisato's character to blame others. He knew her long enough to know that Ikeku was a good soldier and a great friend. He will be missed and never forgotten. If no one else, you and I will remember him in all of his glory for the rest of our lives. Shisato dropped her armful of flowers and wrapped her arms around Yumi Chika for security as her emotions got the better of her. I'm sorry, she apologized for lashing out. The entire charade of the flower thing was so she could make up for Ikeku's death by vitalizing the others who were down for the count. It's all right, no harm done. Yumi Chika told her. The two friends stood there and Yumi Chika let Shisato calm down surrounded by azure flowers. In large contrast to the serene scene going on between Yumi Chika and Shisato, the battle between Kenpeki and Neliel was growing supremely chaotic and the intensity was about to go up even higher as Neliel realized the death of her fraction. Soon, their Ryotsu would disperse, and they would become a great nothingness, just a lump of Ryotsu waiting to be recycled. Nothingness. She was in a void. The implications of what had just happened hit her like a sledgehammer. Loneliness. Nobody caring. An endless cycle of eat or be eaten, a ruthless life of social Darwinism, where the strong preyed on the weak. As a Vastolord, she had risen above that, and she had been so overjoyed to find that not all Arrancar were this twisted, that some of them retained goodness and mercy despite the nature, red as tooth and claw rule of Hueco Mundo. And now they were dead. Slain by the Shinigami. This was war, casualties unavoidable, but Neliel was not in a place where logical reasoning held any bearing. Turning her gaze to her opponent, slipping into Sonido, she reappeared behind Kenpeka's back, the man only barely spinning around to meet her strike. Furiously, she struck at him again and again, pushing him back. Sweeping to the side, coming down from above, using Sonido to appear and reappear at her leisure, she was outspeeding him, and her technical skill was showing. She opened gash after gash on his torso and legs, but the man just laughed, encouraged by her effort. Brilliant. He roared. That's the spirit. Not responding, Neliel hacked at him with a surgical, brutal savagery. She moved at a speed superior to any she was normally capable of. For the first time in her life, she let hatred rule her, and time seemed to slow down. Her rage was like a massive fundament, a rock, a mountain, an overwhelming force consuming all thoughts and ideals. All she cared about was killing this man, killing him and every last damned Shinigami she could before she died. Just you wait, Pesha, Dondakaka. I'll be right behind you. Kenpeka was being pushed back. Her Ryotsu was flaring, in the extreme output of an individual put to her utmost physical limit. He knew that look in her eye, he had seen it many times in the Rukon. It was the ruthless, hateful look of a fighter with nothing left to lose, all inhibitions removed. Insanity lay that way, he should know. That's it. That's it. He roared with maniacal laughter, bashing her blade back. I was wondering when you were gonna get serious with me. Taking off his eye patch, he swung down on her, hard. Blown back by the explosive force, Neliel staggered. Kenpeka did not waste a second, slamming his sword down on her again and again, screaming and hollering with the exuberance of battle. With the tense air between Neliel and Kenpeka charging up even more, Tatsuki, Chad and Uriu's opponents seemed to realize it was just about time for them to utilize their powers. Suck dry, Vampiro. Vampire, West declared. Tease, Diabollo. Imp, Lilia invocated. Frighten, Demonio. Demon, Sesha shouted. Wes' transformation gave him a long cape and turned his skin pale. The cape was affixed to his body in the same fashion as Zero's. Lilia obtained a pair of horns on her head, little devil wings, clawed feet, and a devil tail. Her skin also turned the same color as her hair. Sesha's release was relatively the same for Sesha's, including the skin tone change to match her hair. Their Ryotsu has increased pretty well over. We're going to need a plan to win this fight. So here's what we're going to do. Urayu began to explain his plan, but Tatsuki was having trouble listening as she began to hear incessant whispering in her ear that bothered her and wouldn't leave her alone. She put her hands on her head and staggered about violently. Don't lose control. Don't lose control. Don't lose control, she repeated to herself, but it was to no avail. Arisawa, are you okay? Urayu asked. I can't control it. Tatsuki shouted as she dropped to her knees and flames surged everywhere, forcing both allies and enemies alike to back away. When the flames cleared, Tatsuki's eyes glowed with bright hot flames. Behind the fire her pupils had become crescent-shaped like a lizard. Her sclera was yellow. Her arms, legs, wings and tail were now reptilian rather than lava-like, but fire surged around them like an aura. Arisawa. Urayu approached Tatsuki, but was ignored. Tatsuki looked down at her right hand and flexed it. She spoke with a different voice. Ah, it feels so good to be out in the open. Arisawa, answer me. Urayu shouted. Tatsuki looked at Urayu. Ryotsu indicates individual as a Quincy, but not hostile. What? Arisawa, it's me, Ishida. Quincy is called Ishida, mistakes me for Arisawa. Correction necessary. I am Kaibun, Ishida, Kaibun told Urayu, I live within Arisawa's body. Are you friend or foe? Urayu asked. Those terms are not in my vocabulary. Inquiry cannot be met with an answer, Kaibun responded and then took notice of Wes, Lilia, and Sesha, hostiles spotted. Entering battle mode. Kaibun exploded her Ryotsu and tore towards Wes, piercing her claws into his chest and dragging him along the ground before throwing him across the air and following up her assault on him with a large, homing fireball. Hey! Urayu shouted, not liking being ignored. Ishida, Chad put a hand on the Quincy's shoulder, let's let Kaibun-san handle them for now, we can sort out her allegiance after the enemy has been dealt with. Shouldn't we help her? Urayu asked. No. Chad looked at Kaibun, there's something off about her. I feel that if we get involved she won't hesitate to attack through us or consider us in her way. Her Ryotsu feels weird. Urayu adjusted his glasses to see if he could sense what Chad was talking about. Yes, now I sense it too. He looked up at Kaibun as she fought using Tatsuki's powers. Is this Kaibun a spirit of some sort or an invader of Arisawa's body? How long has she been inside Arisawa's body? Did Arisawa know about it? If she did, why didn't she tell anyone? What's going on? Lilia and Sesha surrounded Kaibun from her flanks and charged a sapphire and violet Zero at her between their horns. Kaibun glanced side to side, and when the Zeros were fired, creating a field of heated energy and blocked them, then she struck Sesha like a falling meteor and drove a flaming arm right through her abdomen before piercing her claws into the Arrancar girl's skull, thumb into her eye and tossed her towards the ground. She warped straight into the ground. She then charged a gigantic fireball and then flicked it at Sesha, whereupon the fireball detonated and took Sesha with it. Kaibun protected herself with her wings. You damn bitch. That was my best friend you murdered. Lilia charged Kaibun down. And what makes you think I care? Kaibun stated and charged a blast of fire. Burn to cinders, Koton Nan. Chaotic flame, Kaibun incinerated Lilia with a continuous stream of fire. She then leapt forward and slashed Lilia in half with her wings before bursting forth her spirit energy to burn her corpse. That's barbaric. That thing is not Arisawa. That's not even human. Total destruction is completely unnecessary, it's like a hollow. You were a fool to challenge me. Kaibun beat out her wings only for an energy blast to come at her, which she deflected with her hand as Wes reappeared on the scene. I thought you were dead. It'll take more than a simple throw to stop me, Wes responded and then began firing energy blast after energy blast at Kai-Bun. He was going at it for a while, reaching 76 blasts before Kai-Bun's voice came from behind him. "You done?" Wes turned around frightfully before Kai-Bun punched him in the face with fire imbued with it, kneed Wes in the stomach, turned around and kicked him mule-style in the chest before warping behind him and slashing him down his back, tearing off his cape. Wes turned sharply and blasted Kai-Bun in the face, scoring a direct hit. Tatsuki's body now had a wound coming off from her forehead, trickling down towards her eye, but all the injury seemed to do was tick Kai-Bun off. "You dare to injure me?" Her energy exploded forth. Hinoken. Fire sword, holding out her hand with her fingers together, Kai-Bun rushed forward and stabbed Wes through, the formation of a fire blade piercing through the wound in his chest. Kai-Bun ripped her hand from Wes' body and as he crumpled forward she dropped onto his back with a firm double foot kick. Ryasei Tsuka. The impact dropped her enemy right into the ground. Wes fired a zero in retaliation as he got up. "Oh please," Kai-Bun scoffed and then charged up energy in her wing before launching a three-segmented burst of flaming energy at Wes. Ryasei 2. Meteor Wing, the triple segment technique blasted through Wes and damaged him further. Tatsuki cast her hand towards the ground. Kai-Bun dove towards the ground and then grabbed Wes by the throat and tossed him into the air above her. She then began to gather energy all around her as her body started to glow. What's she going to do? There's so much spirit energy, I'm almost mistaking her for a captain using a Bankai. Tenhasa. Sky Attack. The long length of a dragon emerged from Tatsuki's body and tore through Wes like tissue paper as a gigantic hole formed in his body that nearly separated his torso into pieces. "Now we end this," Kai-Bun declared calmly, and as Wes dropped to the ground she waited till his head got to her eye level. Kane no Ryu, she decapitated him and incinerated the rest of Wes' body with her attack. "Ask not for mercy from me," Kai-Bun declared as she fanned out flames above, beneath, and around her. "There is none to be given. All right, I've had just about enough of this." Urayu shouted and stomped over to Kai-Bun. "Who are you and what have you done with Arisawa? What is your purpose?" "Purpose is to protect this vessel. I am part of the power of the girl you call Arisawa. I am the true power within her, the power that calls out to smite and to kill, and I will carry out that dream," Kai-Bun said, holding her hand to the sky as a spark of flame appeared in her palm. "Arisawa would never want that," Urayu shouted. He didn't know Tatsuki long, but he knew the girl had more restraint and more compassion than what he had just witnessed unless Orium's life was in direct danger. "And how do you propose to understand what she wants?" "You do not live inside her," Kai-Bun stated. "Then answer me this, if that is your purpose, why are you still here? Shouldn't Arisawa have control back?" "You won?" Urayu questioned. "The battle is not yet over, there are more enemies to slay," Kai-Bun reveled. "I can feel it in my soul and it tingles pleasurably." "Hold on, you expelled a lot of spirit energy to pull of those techniques, you should take it easy," Urayu responded. "This is War Quincy, and where there is war there are enemies to smite, and smite them I shall. I am Kai-Bun, harbinger of destruction, goddess of fire. Very few flames match the intensity at which I burn," Kai-Bun boasted. Urayu drew out Jinrei Kojaka without hesitation. "If that is what you are, then you are neither human nor ally. You are a monster and must be stopped. I will let Arisawa have possession of her own body. To let you roam free would be dangerous to all sides involved and to Arisawa. You'll push her too far. You would stop me?" Kai-Bun laughed. "Oh, how overconfident we are. You don't stand a chance against me. You," she drove her elbow backwards, "and your friend," she nailed Chad right in the chest and sent him flipping back. Chad landed on his feet and crossed Brazo Dericha del Gigante over his body. "We can still try, for Arisawa's sake we will make sure she has control of her own body." "You're out of control," Urayu scowled. "And you're out of your league, Quincy. I don't care if you are friends in this girl's memories. Anyone that dares get in my way is an enemy. I will terminate all of my enemies in my fire. Now, prepare yourselves, the time for words is over." Kai-Bun charged her flames in her palm. Damage received 10%. Base damage is 120%. Targets are the Quincy and the human. Victory is almost guaranteed. Kai-Bun channeled energy in both her hands and let the flames flow around her before beating out her wings and throwing her hands at her sides. Battle start. To be continued. Chapter 80, The Truth About Kai-Bun. Third-person POV. Kai-Bun stood in between Uriah and Chad, waiting for the boys to make their move. She then beckoned a claw to Uriah only for the Quincy to scowl and Chad to take the bait. El Directo. The half-Mexican let rip a powerful energy blast. Kai-Bun escaped into the sky along with Uriah, who rained down several arrows upon her. Kain Ryu. Like a spinning missile, Kai-Bun tore towards Uriah, his arrows melting and dissipating against the cloak of flame along her body. Uriah managed to dodge to the side and watched Kai-Bun go by. Whenever she attacks, her entire body is wreathed in fiery spirit energy that seemed to cancel out and nullify low-level attacks. He watched Kai-Bun break out of her spinning attack and turn to face him. The only time she would be vulnerable to my arrows is when she's idle like that, but only on her torso. But if I puncture her full of arrows, what will happen to Arisawa? Uriah was broken from his thoughts when Kai-Bun appeared right in front of him. Raisin Furia. Kai-Bun spun and uppercut Uriah right in the jaw. She disappeared and appeared above the Quincy and generated a large fireball and launched it at him, smashing Uriah into the ground. He got up as Kai-Bun lowered herself to the ground with such velocity that she tore up the pavement beneath her. However, before the self-proclaimed goddess of fire could launch an attack, Chad came up from behind her. He punched her in the cheek with his left arm and sent her flying into a building. El Directo. Uriah dodged out of the way quickly as the blast tore towards Kai-Bun's location. Uriah let Chad have a go at Kai-Bun while he tried to work out some sort of way to beat the fiery entity. Kai-Bun came charging forward so quickly that Uriah only saw her for a mere instant as she went by. Did she just get faster? Kai-Bun tore towards Chad and charged fire into her fist. Kaso Kabushi. Her attack impacted against Chad's right arm, but Kai-Bun's attack seemed to be strong enough to punch into Chad's right arm and caused a bleeding burn in the center. Chad belted at Kai-Bun with a left hook, but she dodged to the side. She sliced at him with her wing, sending off darts of flame. Raya Siaitu. Chad was knocked aside as the flame impacted upon his right arm and one caught onto his pants. Chad picked up a clump of dirt and rubbed it on his burn, but Kai-Bun wasted no time taking advantage of his mortal necessities and Kain Ryu. She tore towards Chad and smashed into his chest, sending him into a lamp post. You were foolish to challenge me. Kai-Bun created another large fireball, but before she could throw it, Uriah took aim with arrows at her wings. Kai-Bun pivoted and knocked away the arrows going towards her right wing before launching the fireball at Uriah. It grazed his left arm and he fired upon her with a few more arrows. Kai-Bun dodged and charged a large amount of energy in between her fists. Koton Nan. The tips of the flames barely reached Uriah as they tore forward. Damn limited range. Kai-Bun tore up towards the sky as Uriah retreated back and charged more energy into her right fist. Uriah prepared to take aim at her fist. The moment she releases her energy with Kaso Kabushi, I'll aim at her shoulder and impair her. However, Kai-Bun was not about to use Kaso Kabushi. She had another technique that required the same preparation, but with different execution. Shoryuken. Rising Dragon Fist. The attack came from below as Kai-Bun belted Uriah underneath his chin, turned her body towards Uriah's right and hooked her right arm towards the left side of her body. The flames ejected from her right arm pushed Uriah up and back. Uriah felt his neck almost snap from the whiplash caused by the impact. You're done, Quincy. Kai-Bun declared and outstretched her arm in place and spun her wrist before creating a fiery sword with the energy being generated. She chucked the sword at Uriah, but Chad appeared just in the nick of time and blocked it, but the attack became lodged in his right arm. Thanks, Sato, Uriah said to him. No problem, Chad responded, it seems it might take both of us to take her down, we have to work together rather than getting her isolated. Uriah nodded, I was thinking the same thing. One or both, it does not matter, Kai-Bun stated, bring as many as you want and I will crush them all. Kai-Bun continued to clash with Chad and Uriah and the clash finally drifted to Ichigo's location as he worked to defeat Hallibal's Fraction. His superior speed gave him an advantage, but every time he managed to isolate one of them and go for an injurious blow, the other two would blindside him, making the fight more difficult than he had anticipated. He had managed a few good slashes at his opponents, but after using so much energy against Alon, he wasn't fighting at full capacity, and now with his friends supposedly fighting each other, he became worried and distracted and wound up taking 3 zeros to the back and was plowed straight into the ground. Ichigo got up from the ground. His Shiakusho was torn now, especially along the left arm. He panted as he stood. Seems whatever power he used to defeat Alon isn't good enough to defeat us, Apache taunted. The difference was speed. Alon was so large that Ichigo could attack him with full force and all he could do was take it, but against weaker, faster opponents, it called for a change of tact, and Ichigo was slowly realizing that. He had only fought one-on-one when he fought Lelouch, but a lesson was coming back to him. Say Lelouch, we're only fighting one-on-one, right? Yes, why? Well, what do I do if I'm fighting multiple enemies? I doubt it's going to be as easy as what I've done all my life. That's certainly true. Worst case scenario, what if I'm the only one left standing and Talbumasuk has all the Espada go after me? Should that happen, realistically we'd be up a creek with no paddle given the implications, but in theory, if you find yourself surrounded by multiple, skilled enemies, it's the same as fighting one-on-one, but you need to anticipate the movements of your other opponents. Try to isolate one enemy while remembering that your extra opponents will try to flank you. Right, that's what I'm not doing. I've only been isolating one, forgetting about the other two. I have to concentrate. This is, sort of like a street brawl, but with tactics. I can do this. Ichigo told himself. Ichigo raised up his damaged, bare arm and gathered energy towards it and his entire Shiakusho, repairing it all on his own. He stopped panting and exhaled with strong eyes. Much better. What the hell, his Ryutsu suddenly spiked. Mila Rose gaped. Thanks to Lelouch's training, Ichigo had learned that his Shiakusho was a measure of his Ryutsu. So, by learning to control Reishi and Ryuryoku, he could use the energy in the air to repair his Shiakusho, thereby replenishing his stamina. Wounds would still take their toll on his body, but so long as there was a supply of Reishi, Ichigo could repair the damage to his Shiakusho and constantly fight at his full capacity. Tatsuki, Ishida, Chad, whatever's going on, I'll be sure to come and help as soon as I can, but for now, he glared at Apache, Sun, and Mila Rose, I have these 3 to deal with. Here I go. Ichigo took off from the ground and went after his enemies. As he did so, Kira, currently contending with the former Kido Corps commander, just lost the use of Ichigo's Bankai. What? No, it's still too early for me to lose command. As Kira's speed slowed up, Tessai came roaring from behind and hammered him into the ground from over the back of the head. Kira got up. Damn, what do I do? This guy won't give me his name. But how did I lose that orange-haired punk's Bankai so quickly? Tessai came thundering down to the ground. Kira escaped with Sonido. No matter, I'll use another one. He quickly inscribed Nijibana Sora ni Raisenjo onto his chest, but it quickly faded. What? Tessai came lunging forward with a powerful punch. Kira again dodged. I don't understand, this always worked in practice. What am I missing? Is it possible my technique only works if the Zanpakuto or Bankai in question isn't being used by its original owner? No, if that were the case I never would have been able to use Kurosaki Ichigo's Bankai, or perhaps it's when they are using it actively or to a concentrated extent. If that's the case, Kira became confident and turned and faced off against Tessai. I know one Zanpakuto whose owner is currently out of commission. Kira quickly inscribed Sakanade onto his lower abdomen and Shinji's Zanpakuto appeared in his hand. The swirling mist appeared and Tessai stopped and gaped when he saw Kira standing upside down. No, not just Kira, his entire vision was upside down. Welcome, Kira said to Tessai, to the inverted world. He rushed at Tessai head-on, but to Tessai it appeared like Kira was coming at him from behind. Kira slashed Tessai in the back before Sonidoing above and cutting him in the shoulder. Tessai's massive muscles swung out furiously to try and hit Kira's slash and vanish regime, and all the while Kira laughed maniacally. What's the matter, can't hit me? You pathetic excuse for a wrestler. Hold still. Damn you. Tessai roared. Kira of course ignored him. He appeared beneath Tessai and charged a zero, but Tessai properly looked up. Hado 88, Hiri Yujikazoku Shintenreiho. However, Kira was actually above and behind Tessai, not in the direction he was looking. The Zero came in and blasted Tessai straight into the ground. Kira snickered at the sight, but the small snicker turned into giddy chuckling, which followed up straight into a loud, manic laugh. Kira was laughing so excitedly though that he nearly missed it when a sword came within inches of his body. Kira dodged slightly to the side and saw Kanade banged against a three-pronged golden-colored sword. That's impossible. Standing in front of him was Kurotsuke Mayuri. You should still be on the ground unable to move. How are you standing up so quickly? Mayuri put a hand up to his non-existent ear. Are you asking me how it is I managed to come back from a comatose state after you shut down all of my motor skills, forcing me to lie down unable to do anything? The answer is quite simple. As you know, captains can call forth their Shikai without declaring their names. As I lay upon the ground, I called forth Ashisaji Jaizu all on its own. Since the weapon was still in its scabbard it burst right through the sheath and cut my legs. Ashisaji Jaizu's ability paralyzes the limbs of whatever it cuts, but leaves the pain receptors intact. My body is constructed like a computer, in other words, new information overwrites old information. By cutting myself in my legs instead of having my entire body paralyzed, only my limbs were paralyzed. However, my body is also constructed to negate the effects of my own Zanpakuto, should I be cut by it. Therefore, by injuring myself, I overwrote your ability to comatose me, Mayuri explained. I must say though, your ability is quite intriguing. I can't wait to bring you back to my lab and dissect you. Kira became on edge and prepared to release more of Sakanade's fumes. Oh, and don't even bother with that foul-smelling sight scrambler. My brain is circuited against any sort of technique or device to throw off my perception of reality. This, however, only worked to make sure Mayuri could see the proper way of which he was trying to see. Sakanade changed an opponent's perception of view. Kyoka Suijutsu could change what was being viewed, so such a thing would have never worked against Aizen. Kira began to laugh maniacally again. So you think that just because you've been observing this battle up until now that you can defeat me? You think because you know how my ability works you can stop me? Don't count on it, Kurotsuke Mayuri. Kira wrote another Zanpakuto on his arm, Hiyo Zabumaru. The giant snake-like Bankai appeared. I'll crush you with the unadulterated power of this Bankai. Mayuri simply grinned in response. At the battlefield between Byakuya and Ulquiorra, the 6th Division captain was slowly starting to become aware of his opponent's ability. Using Shikai alone he had been able to hold his own against Ulquiorra's fierce strikes and fiercer Zeros. The damage he inflicted upon Ulquiorra was regenerated immediately and the Espada had yet to put a single scratch on Byakuya, but that was about to change. Ulquiorra blasted Senbonzakura's petals with a Zero and then took notice of the Tensei in the battlefield. Byakuya sealed his Zanpakuto for the umpteenth time to repair Senbonzakura. Something the matter? Byakuya's honor prevented him from striking a skilled enemy that appeared distracted, especially if the enemy might reveal something interesting, or the distraction was a facade. Can't you feel it? Ulquiorra asked. The battlefield is becoming increasingly tense. More and more Soul Reapers and Arrancar alike are drawing upon their inner strength, the Segunda himself has even gone into his resurrection. What's your point? Byakuya asked. My point is this, Ulquiorra held out his sword, I believe it's about time I stopped feeling out your skills and actually tried to kill you. In close, black energy surged around Ulquiorra, Mercy Lago. Ulquiorra released his form and was shown to have completed the helmet upon his head and grew out 2 giant black bat wings. He then created a lance of energy and attacked quickly and fiercely. Byakuya quickly got out of the way, but Ulquiorra's strike nicked him along his right cheek. Byakuya realized the danger he was in almost immediately. He drew away from Ulquiorra and let go of his sword. Bankai, the sword sunk into an ethereal dimension as rows and rows of blades shot up around Byakuya. Senbonzakura Kage Yoshi. Using the palms of his hands Byakuya sent forth a rush of blades at Ulquiorra, nicking him in multiple places. Ulquiorra rushed through the barricade of blades and attacked Byakuya head-on with his lance, but Byakuya stopped the assault with another barricade and attacked Ulquiorra from behind. The Quarto Espada was flanked from the left and used his Hierro-enhanced wing to deflect a majority of the blades and then tossed his lance towards Byakuya with excessive velocity, but the lance was trapped by Senbonzakura's blades and destroyed. "This one is indeed strong," Ulquiorra noted. He became encircled in Byakuya's blades and upon being slashed apart from all sides looked at Byakuya from around the swirling mass of blades and pulled out another energy lance. Blades brushed against Ulquiorra's skin creating small cuts, but his body regenerated them almost immediately. "I could crush this power in an instant with Segunda Etapa, but a Tremere-sama specifically said that we should retreat if we are pressed to use such a power and only to do so if our life is in danger." Ulquiorra felt his eyes blink. "The more data we collect during this battle the better off we will be for round 2. I can fight this man with this current level of power. I will not die." As Ulquiorra continued to fight Byakuya head-on, Ciela and Hisuna were also clashing with one another. Hisuna's whip, even without its songs, proved rather versatile against her opponent. Ciela was still somewhat singed from Hisuna's initial attack. aka Minyo had scorched Ciela's skin from chocolate brown to a blackened ash color in some places and she had several burns in others. Ciela came at Hisuna with her halberd with an overhead swing, but Hisuna struck back with her whip and lashed the weapon out of the way. Even Ciela had to commend Hisuna's remarkable skill with the leather weapon. However, after Ciela was knocked away, she noticed Hisuna staring off into space in a specific direction. Her staring wasn't empty though, it was concentrated and her gaze seemed worried. Ciela focused her pesquias to try and sense what Hisuna was trying to sense. A statement of advice came from Talbumasuk. "Some of the Soul Reapers will be worried about some of the others. A taunt about the Soul Reaper they are worried about can sometimes give you an advantage in the psychological warfare against your enemy." Ciela noticed that Hisuna was focused in on Byakuya and Ulquiorra's battle and smiled. She knew who Hisuna and Byakuya were. As the Queen of Poison she made a habit to learn about the noble class Soul Reapers. "Worried about your husband?" Ciela asked. "Hardly," Hisuna returned to being focused. "Byakuya-sama is strong. He would never lose. I wouldn't be so overconfident. Ulquiorra is one of our strongest and level-headed fighters. Even the head of the Kukaki family would be hard-pressed against such an opponent," Ciela grinned. Although Ulquiorra wasn't the highest on the chain of command, Ciela revered him as though he were. Ulquiorra was methodical, calculating and had earned the nickname amongst all of the Arrancar as the tactician. Most of the tactics for round 2 would be a cooperative effort between him and Talbumasuk. The qualities of his thinking process and his flat personality made him the ideal individual for Ciela to have as a bodyguard or companion. With Carthus and Sakuratella gone, the Octava Espada knew she would need someone to feed her superiority/inferiority complex. Ciela looked at Hisuna. "If Ulquiorra wishes to get serious then I believe I shall as well." Ciela leaned forward holding the center of her halberd letting the weapon slide forward in her hand. "Feast and feed, Reina de Insectos." Queen of Insects, an ear-splitting buzzing rang out as Ciela declared her release as a giant green honeycomb appeared around her and swallowed her up. It dripped with shiny, glowing green fluid. Hisuna felt sick just looking at it and it showed in her face, but when she felt the surge of riot so she became professional. 2 overlapping pairs of wings shot through the sides of the honeycombs and began vibrating in place, creating a buzzing noise and began splitting the honeycomb. Hisuna knew that she should be using this reprieve to her advantage. Bankai. Saigo no Chu no Kaze no Iriko. She emerged in her Bankai form and swung overhead at Ciela's transformation that was still being completed, but as the gigantic owl arm swung down a swarm of small, shiny green bees burst forth and formed a hand slowed Hisuna's attack. As the bees were slashed up, Ciela emerged from the honeycomb. On her back was a twin pair of insect-like wings. Her eyes were decisively bug-like, allowing her to see Hisuna from multiple angles. Her ball-ended antennae were now spiked and hooked over in the center. Her arms seemed to secrete the same fluid the honeycomb had and bee-like arms formed along the outer sides of Ciela's arms. Her ass was now a large, stripped thorax with an appropriately sized stinger. "Ew! I hate bugs!" Hisuna shouted in her head. Of all things, why did this have to be her release form? "Shikara," Ciela declared and brought her hands close together and flapped her wings rapidly creating a sonic wave of an ear-splitting, awful, high-pitched buzzing. Hisuna reflexively covered her ears to block out the noise, but the noise was a high-level amplified sonic wave that, without Hisuna defending herself, forced her back across the air and into the wall of the barrier. Ciela took this to her advantage and came buzzing in towards Hisuna to attack her directly. Hisuna recovered well before Ciela arrived on her location and prepared to strike back. She struck at Ciela with the large owl-like arm that appeared when she swung her sword, but Ciela dodged it with ease. As she drew near, Hisuna began singing notes and a whirlwind of fire appeared, forcing Ciela to back off. Hisuna appeared behind Ciela. "What's the matter, Your Highness?" Hisuna said with a smirk. "Don't tell me a little fire bothers you." She activated her second song again. Ciela backed off again. Hisuna sung out the notes to her first song and a group of small twisters tore after Ciela. Standing in place, the Queen of Poison thrust her arms forward and a bunch of glowing green bees went and took the attack for her. She went to attack Hisuna from behind, but Hisuna started up the fire again. However, rather than going into the flames or retreating up, Ciela clamped her legs against her thorax, leaned back and charged energy around her stinger, creating a bright red zero. The attack blasted straight through Hisuna's flames. Hisuna received damage along her left arm and wing and appeared in front of Ciela, panting. She then began to sing out the notes to activate her final song, the Symphony of Shadows. A group of shadow orbs appeared. She didn't stop and continued to sing the notes, creating more and more shadow spheres. The spheres began attacking Ciela from all directions, and every time Ciela tried to strike Hisuna, she was flanked by a sphere. Hisuna's goal was to pelt Ciela with her Shikai's ultimate attack in Bankai form. Only a lot of time would tell if it would work. To the northeast, Kion and Mia were still going at it. Kion had done well so far, keeping Mia at bay, but the violet-haired Arrancar was far from beaten. Kion sent out a wave of water at Mia as the other tridents did the same thing. Mia was swarmed by the attack, but all it seemed to do was cover her in water. She smiled flirtatiously at Kion as she licked her right index finger. "Kion-kun, you're getting me all wet." Kion grit his teeth at the sexual innuendo and commanded two of his tridents. One was ordered to use Dayton Enegama, the other Koto Yukinohana. However, because Kion had just obtained his Bankai, like Renji, it wasn't well maintained and control was easily lost. Unlike Hisuna, his Bankai was not completely primed for battle, but if he didn't use it, he would lose the battle for sure and be at Mia's mercy. Mia used the sharpened feathers from her wings to slash away the Dayton Enegama trident and then fired a bala at the other incoming trident before making a mad dash towards Kion. He fired forward two of his tridents at her and she did a magnificent backflip to dodge, purposely trying to get Kion to stare at her boobs as they bounced, but the veteran Soul Reaper refused to be distracted by Mia's obvious flaunting of her assets, despite the fact that her lower body and animal instincts were egging him to pin Mia down and dominate her. Of course, because of the very nature of her release, the Ryotsu Mia leaked everywhere came with the small additive of an aphrodisiac while in resurrection. Just being inside her space drove creatures with potential sexual lust wild, and, with her new body, her mere touch could drive a man mad. Of course, Kion was restrained enough that he could fight despite his raging erection. Most of this restraint extended from the very fact that he hated Mia's guts. She was a permanent reminder of his failure to save Miyako, and although he supposedly had liberated Miyako, it still didn't change the fact of what Mia was. Mage Tsutsuji. Kion wobbled the Nijibana in his hand and forced two other Nijibana to do the same, and both sprayed a missile of water at Mia. She used the tentacles on her back to beat the water away. She let out an erotic moan and rubbed her left breast with her right hand. "You know, Kion-kun, all of this battle is making me hot. I'm finding it hard to control myself with this level of pleasure." One of Kion's eyes bugged out. No, she's not going to do that again, is she? Unfortunately for Kion, Mia was about to do exactly what he was hoping she wasn't about to do. Mia began to grope herself and shoved her other arm down her panties and began to fondle herself. Kion did his best to restrain himself. He didn't want to watch, but there was a rule in battle about never taking your eyes off your enemy. Kion felt Mia was crafty enough that if she realized she wasn't getting an audience, she'd use Sonito and attack him from behind. As Mia continued to touch herself inappropriately, the pleasure caused her to flap her wings rapidly and she slid over onto her back, while still floating in the air until she climaxed, to which a surge of energy shot forth and Mia increased in muscularity. Her skin shined and the scruffs and damage she had received earlier seemed to vanish as Mia's body began to increase itself in sexual appeal. Her wings became long and demonic and the feather blades increased in number and became super thin. Mia's nails became red like a fire engine and her stilettos were now see-through. Thick, dark blue eyeshadow accented her bright blue eyes and her lips were glossed with lilac lipstick as her hair brushed itself away from her eye, allowing her to see Kyan with both. Her mask fragments were still over her previously covered eye though. A thick white, triangular-tipped tail sprouted out from above Mia's currently dampened panties. She breathed out in ecstasy. "Don't I look appetizing, Kyan-kun?" Mia pushed her breasts together with her arms. "That is disturbing." Kyan's right eye twitched. "Do you know that?" "But you watched, didn't you?" Mia laughed flirtatiously. "You could have stopped me, you know, naughty boy." Kyan turned red, but at the same time became angered. "And get caught in the riot to increase? No thanks, besides I would never take my eyes off an opponent for a second." Mia laughed again. "So you say," she smiled, "but I know you liked it." "Shut up, missing in action." Kyan attacked Mia with his Ajisai Dai Kojui with 5 of his tridents, but Mia had become so powerful that her whitened Zero destroyed the attack fully and completely. Mia got right in Kyan's space and kneed him in the stomach. As his mouth opened from having the wind knocked out of him, Mia opened her mouth and latched it onto Kyan's. The sensation of arousal, caused by his opponent, though much against his will, allowed Mia to steal Kyan's Ryotsu for her own until the vice-captain became so lightheaded that he fell from the sky, feeling drained. Mia laughed and wiped under her lip. "Your lips are divine, Kyan-kun. I can't wait to feel what the rest of you is like." Mia dove towards the ground after the water user. However, as she tore towards the ground it turned out Kyan had recovered faster than the seductress had anticipated as a blast of water attacked her from over her shoulder. From the ground, Kyan's thoughts explained his recovery. "I remembered how she sucked me dry once before in our last battle, so when she hit me I did my best to well up as much spirit energy as I could deep inside my own body so that she'd only suck out a portion of it and I could recover. Mia, your tricks won't work on me." Kyan sent 3 Nejibanas out to use Dayton Enegama. "I will defeat you." As Kyan made this declaration, Nimue and Rukia were working out how to deal with Loli and Mainoli. Both kept an eye on themselves, each other, their opponents and each other's opponents. Neither wanted the other to have happened to them or each other what happened to Nanao. As Rukia fought against Loli she dodged another tendril of Loli's as she thought up a battle plan. "I've yet to use this technique in actual combat so I don't know how it will fare up against an opponent in actual combat, but if I don't try it, we're done for." Rukia turned over and attacked Loli. Hado 33, Sakasui. "That won't work," Loli declared with a crazed smile and turned Rukia's Kido to mush. However, Rukia was already circling around Loli and was now behind her. She was moving about as if she was doing a waltz, but was spinning like a ballerina as she tapped the air with each foot movement until a large white flower formed around her. Yatsu no Mai, Byakuran. White lotus, icy flower petals flowed out in a storm of snow and created a chilling breeze towards Loli as torso-sized, petal-shaped masses of snow and ice blew in Loli's direction. There were far too many for Loli to stop them all and she was caught on by Rukia's attack and chilled along her arms and legs. She dared not use her poison that close up for fear she might freeze herself. Tsuji on Mai, Hakuran. Rukia froze Loli on the spot. Loli, of course, broke out with her poison, but as she did Nimue came from behind her decking her once across the face with a hook delivered a swift kick to the side of her abdomen uppercut her in the jaw and then smashed Loli forward with a hard kick. Rukia. Rukia appeared behind the pig-tailed Arrancar and used Sode no Shirayuki to slash down her back, hack off one of Loli's tendrils with her blade and then used Hakuran to blast her back at Nimue. Rather than freezing Loli solid, Rukia controlled Hakuran to only freeze Loli's back. As she remained stuck to the block of ice, Nimue punched her in the chest, sending Loli through the frozen chunk of Rukia's attack. Her tendrils frozen, Loli could not retaliate as Nimue brought her leg up, over, and then down over the Fraxion's head and sent her slamming into the ground, finishing her and Rukia's dynamic aerial combo. Kuratsuka Fukotaiko, what happened to the other one? Rukia asked Nimue. I threw her into a building just as you froze the poisonous Arrancar. She should be coming back. Nimue, instead of finishing her sentence, whipped out her Zanpakuto and blocked Mainoli's strike with her dagger-sized blade. You two are going to pay for what you just did to Loli. Do you hear me? Mainoli raged. Nimue leapt back by Rukia as Mainoli held out her dagger pointed at the two of them. Paralyze, Alacron. Scorpion. Mainoli emerged in her resurrection. In accordance with the name of her resurrection, she obtained the claws and the tail of the creature she took after. In the center of her chest the legs the creature would have folded inwardly along her torso, hugging against her chest. Across the bridge of her nose a guard resembling the mouth of a scorpion appeared. Mainoli opened one claw and charged a Zero and fired it. Rukia and Nimue both got out of the way. However, as Rukia traveled to the left, Mainoli sent her stinger out to run her through, but Nimue slashed at Mainoli's tail. She didn't cut it, but her underhand, wrist-flicking strike created a momentum that knocked away Mainoli's tail away from Rukia. She stood between Rukia and Mainoli. Sharpen, Tekubikiri Damashi. Wrist-cutting soul. Upon Nimue's wrists a pair of large sickle-shaped blades attached to two bracelets appeared. I'm going to use it, Lelouch-sama, the power you helped me perfect. Nimue took off like a rocket towards Mainoli. With her wrist she turned and struck Mainoli across the chest, cutting the edges of two of her boned legs before sticking out her leg and kicking her away. For Lelouch-sama, the time has come where we pull out all of the stops, to defeat you. Nimue declared with an uncharacteristic confident glare towards Mainoli. She was right though, all around the battlefield, everyone was slowly slipping into their true power. Lelouch saw when Nimue used her Shikai. Don't let me down, Nimue. He thought to himself. So, how have you and Kuratsuka Taiko's daughter been? Jin asked. I don't know what you're talking about, Lelouch denied. I wasn't implying you two had that kind of relationship. I just know you two are awfully close as all, like siblings, Jin grinned. Say a word to Talbumasuk and I will lynch you. Lelouch declared. Jin chuckled. Oh, that's a funny joke, Lelouch, I'd like to see you try. In all seriousness though, you ain't in a position to make demands of me. Oh, Lelouch tilted his head, not even if I have a better offer to whatever it might be that Talbumasuk has said to you to convince you to stay on his side. Face it, Jin, I know you'd just as soon backstab the guy, take the Hogyaku and run like hell. You're telling me you've never once had the opportunity or that this battle hasn't given you such the chance. I think I know you better than that. Yeah, give me too much credit, Lelouch, Jin grinned. Don't get coy, Lelouch said sternly, but if you don't want to cooperate then I have no reason not to fight you. Lelouch put a hand on his Zanpakuto. However, he extended a hand to Jin. If you'll lend me your aid in exactly how I dictate I can guarantee your life, your freedom, Ranjaku, the Hogyaku, and Talbumasuk's death. All you have to do for one time in your life is trust someone, specifically me, Lelouch proposed. So let me weigh my options, Jin said holding his hands up. On the one hand I got the offer Tally's giving me, on the other I've got you saying you've got an offer of your own. On your side of things, if I don't agree with ya, I gotta fight ya and I could win or lose, but if I agree with ya and your plan fails then I'll lose. Jin sighed in frustration, you know I ain't a gambling man so you've pretty much put all the hands in your favor. You know I don't take chances with anything. Jin flicked his wrist to the side. Go ahead, what ya got for me? While Lelouch and Jin discussed the finer points of Lelouch's strategy, Neliel and Kenpeka continued to do battle. Neliel's mind was chaos. She was not winning anymore. This horrific beast of a Soul Reaper was pushing her back, cutting at her. This was not acceptable. She was going to kill him, kill everyone she could, kill. At this point only death mattered, hers or that of her enemies. Letting out a short laugh, Kenpeka slammed her sword aside, rammed the pommel in her solar plexus, and cut her from shoulder to hip. Neliel didn't respond. She did not even notice the pain. She looked into his eyes, her face a mask of hated. You done already? Kenpeka said, sounding disappointed. You wanted serious. Neliel said, her voice deadpan. All right. Holding out her severed Zanpakuto, she surged her riot suit, declare, Gamuza. Kenpeka looked on his opponent with interest. The loss had spunk, and she could hit like a mule kicked. The massive knockers on top of that meant, he thought to himself, that she would probably be the perfect wife. If she survived. As the mist cleared, the shape of her resurrection became clear. All healed, there she stood on 4 legs, a centaur with the body of a chamois goat antelope and the torso of a beautiful, green-haired woman. Her head adorned with a bone helmet, long horns pointing forward, and in her arm a long bone lance. Kenpeka smiled, standing ready. In the blink of an eye, she cleared the distance between them. The force of the clash was immense, and though Kenpeka managed to parry her blow, make it glance off, a strong backhand from the lance sent him flying. A look of furious determination on her face, she held the lance up like a thrown spear, aiming at him as he got up to his feet. "This ends now," she said coldly, letting the lance fly. "Lanzader Verde. For Pesha. For Dondakaka. For all those dying. This is for them." Kenpeka could not dodge it, nor did he want to. Facing it head-on, he struck it as it impacted, but the force was too great. The lance lodged itself in his stomach, and sent him flying back for hundreds of meters, till he finally slammed back first into one of the pillars. Grunting, he sunk to his feet. Neliel galloped up to him and retrieved her lance from his gut. "You're dead already," she said flatly. "I hope it hurts. You're going to bleed. Your guts will fall out and, by all I hold dear, I hope you will suffer." She moved on. She had more to do, more to kill. She could assist Talbumasuk-sama, whoever was the strongest to fight. Suddenly, she spun around, drawing her sword as she turned, but too late. Kenpeki had gotten to his feet, and with a maniacal grin swung at her. The blade pierced her just below her heart. "What dash? You just don't know me, girl," Kenpeki said. "I am Zaraki Kenpeki, and I never quit." Pulling his sword out of her, he stepped forward, grabbed the Shukta Espada by her collar and slammed his forehead into hers. The mask cracked. Letting go of her, he stepped back. Neliel stumbled backwards, slipping into Sonito. She knew not what to do. He should be dead. Yes. He should be dead. Time, then, to do the job properly. She flared her Ryotsu, but her adrenaline rush subsided slightly. For a moment she felt as if she wanted to lie down and cry, weep until she had no tears left. Cry for Pesha, Dondakaka, and that accursed brave new world Talbumasuk wanted. Nothing mattered any more. Shaking her head, she readied her lance. No. At the very least, she had to avenge Pesha and Dondakaka. She was going to kill him, then kill the bastards who had murdered her friends. Her face hardened with resolve. He couldn't take another hit. He was a dead man walking. Just charge in once, and kill him this time. With all the rage and tension and flaring riots as the real Karakura town, had it been here would have had its population obliterated by just the flaring. The town had become a gigantic war zone where you couldn't take 3 steps without walking into the edge of someone's battle. However, for Arisawa Tatsuki, none of that currently seemed to matter. The girl sat up, dressed in her gym uniform, the same outfit Kaibun was currently going on in a rampage in. She rubbed her head, which felt sore, and opened her eyes to blackness. She could see her body, which was somehow illuminated in the vast darkness, but other than that there was nothing to see. Where am I? Tatsuki looked around. She stood up, the sound of her feet hitting the ground echoing everywhere. Where else do you think? A voice very similar to her own called out. Tatsuki looked to the side and gasped. Standing nearby was a girl who looked almost exactly like her, but somewhat different. The girl had her hair color, but it was longer than hers, going down to her mid-back. She was wearing a black, skin-tight suit with a golden dragon emblazoned on the chest. Her hands and feet were covered by the leather outfit. Her eyes were also on fire. Kaibun. Tatsuki knew the name of her other persona and thought this might be her true form. Kaibun. The girl laughed. No, you fool, she pointed at Tatsuki, I am you. You can't be me, Tatsuki put a hand on her chest, I'm me. It's only natural you'd be confused, but Kaibun can't be here right now, she's fighting using your body, the girl told Tatsuki. Wait, so this is... Tatsuki looked up, I'm inside my own head. Yes, The other version of Tatsuki nodded. But why is it so dark? I thought inner worlds reflected the heart and mind of A. Tatsuki brought her head down and looked forward. Oh right, I'm not a soul reaper, am I? No, you're not, and that very reason is why Kaibun manifests, her other persona replied. What are you talking about? Tatsuki wanted to know. Tatsuki, do you know why your powers manifested the way that they did, why you have an alternate persona within you in the first place? The long-haired version of her asked. Huh? What do you mean? Tatsuki asked. Her other half sighed and pressed her fingertips to her forehead. I suppose I'll have to spell it out for you. Pay attention, because I won't repeat myself. She pointed at Tatsuki. Do you remember how you obtained your powers? She asked. Of course, Sensei gave me a portion of her Ryuryoku and worked with me to help me awaken my latent spirit energy, Tatsuki responded. Her other half nodded. Yes, now compare that to how your friends Sato and Orium obtained their powers. Tatsuki scratched her head. Didn't they obtain their powers from Ichigo's leaked spiritual power? Yes, her long-haired clone responded, but they received a portion of Ichigo's energy that was not intentionally given, and it was from his human self. Your power was deliberately given, and your sensei was and has always been since she first made contact with you, a captain-class Soul Reaper. At the time of obtaining his Soul Reaper powers, Kurosaki Ichigo was no stronger than a high-ranking junior officer, no perhaps weaker than that with his lack of experience and incapability of using Flash Step. Wait, Tatsuki paused her counterpart. How do you know this, but I don't? She pinched the bridge of her nose in frustration. I wouldn't even know how to classify seated officers. I am the part of you awakened through your sensei's granting of spiritual power. Part of her knowledge as well as Kaibun's natural existence exist within me. If it bothers you, since I exist within your mind, you may call me whatever you wish, Tatsuki was told. All right, then I'm calling you Arisa, Tatsuki stated. A shortened version of your surname? Fine by me. As I was saying, you obtained your powers from a captain-class Soul Reaper, and so your powers are much more similar to a Soul Reaper than anyone else in your situation. In fact, the exact energies in which you received were you not human, could have turned you into a Soul Reaper, so all this extra energy, with nowhere else to go, created your other persona, Kaibun. Wait, so Kaibun is like a Zanpakuto spirit? Tatsuki seemed to be catching onto things. Arisa nodded. Kaibun is the anger and rage you build inside yourself, while I, the very source of your power and the part of you of that has all the power that she accumulates, am your serenity and tranquility. From Kaibun's very nature it is why when your body is injured she grows stronger, and why she is at her most powerful right before she would become defeated. A tremor shook Tatsuki's mind and she wobbled and fell over. What was that? She asked as she stood up. Your friends, Ishida and Sato, are trying to stop Kaibun from killing friends and foes alike, Arisa told her. Arisa, why didn't I see you the last time Kaibun took over? Tatsuki asked. Last time she was not out for this long, but this time she has been active for much longer, so your mind is now conscious of your limbo state, Arisa answered. What can I do to stop her? I must get control back, Tatsuki stated. There is nothing. I must get control back, Tatsuki repeated. There is one thing you can do, but it won't be easy, Arisa said and began to glow. What are you doing? Tatsuki asked. Kaibun is the extra energy that your body could not handle. If you can fight me, I who have all of your power, the same power that Kaibun wields, you can use our combined power to overtake her and remain in control. Unfortunately, while I have access to all of your power, you only have access to what you do not possess unless Kaibun takes control. However, here in this world, in your mind, we are of even strength, but different skill level. Arisa burst forth into the form Kaibun took whenever she took over Tatsuki's body, but still having the skin-tight suit. Show me that you are worthy of the power bestowed upon you by your revered sensei. I will. Tatsuki declared. Kataki no Ryu. Then let us create a battlefield worthy of such a contest. Arisa snapped her fingers and the blackness vanished, revealing a dark, desolate area. Large, tomb-like structures rose up from out of the ground, and there were several dragon skeletons scattered about the area. We shall fight till one of us falls. Let's go. This is it, Tatsuki thought to herself, I just have to win this and I can control Kaibun. She ran forward towards Arisa. Kaso Kabushi. To be continued. Check the description for the links to the author.